Chapter 1070. Wang Ling felt that he had underestimated Shadow Dao's ability a little. This was the first time Wang Ling had seen a heavenly Dao spell which he had cast be swallowed up. His mind has already been devoured. All of Loopy Toad's fur stood on end as it instinctively sensed danger. This Shadow Dao could devour people's hearts. The weaker a person's realm was, the weaker they would be. Furthermore, it could stimulate their potential. This was different from Wu Yuanji and Father Zhang's situation. When they had a certain realm, their minds wouldn't be completely eroded. Wang Ling frowned slightly. That was to say, if the power of Shadow Dao was used on an ordinary person, that person would instantly become an extremely heaven-defying expert. When their minds were completely devoured, the potential in their bodies would be completely stimulated, and their combat strength would be enough to reach the top of Huaxiu Nation. Furthermore, they might even be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the top experts of the Dark Network. Wang Ling felt that this was a little similar to his Great Enlightenment spell, and it was enlightenment in reverse. Since Wang Wan's mind wasn't mature yet, it was very normal for this to happen. What Wang Ling needed to do now was to stop her from losing control. "What should we do?" asked Loopy Toad. "Let's do an experiment," Wang Ling said indifferently. Loopy Toad, experiment? Listen. Was this even human? Compared with Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang, this Undertaker Li Daiwei had been devoured more deeply by Shadow Dao, and Wang Ling felt that he was more suitable as an experimental subject for exploring Shadow Dao. As a new Great Dao, Wang Ling currently knew very little about it. He had a lot of ideas about it, but they were just ideas. All scientific progress was achieved through repeated experiments and verification. What Wang Ling needed to do now was verify his conjecture. Based on the current situation, this Undertaker was a relatively good test subject. What powerful energy! After devouring Wang Ling's great purification spell, this Undertaker licked his lips and felt that his strength had improved even more than before. Now that the great purification spell had failed, this was heavenly Dao energy. For the Undertaker, it was like a supplement. Again. 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 After tasting the sweetness, the Undertaker's expression gradually turned even more maniacal. An extremely evil black shadow entrenched itself under his feet like a cyclone, accompanied by black steam. Energy materialization? Loopy Toad was so frightened that it took several steps back, its tail instinctively sweeping around. This was the symbol of a peerless expert. Powerful experts could materialize the energy entrenched in their bodies. According to the records in the Cultivation Encyclopedia, there was a martial artist called Li Shaokai who was able to use energy to the point of perfection. His mastery of body techniques was unparalleled in both ancient and modern times. One of the 10 great generals, Marshal Saint Marshal Jiang, was one of Li Shaokai's disciples. However, Master Li had planned to use his physical skills to break through the Void Gate. In the end, he could not withstand the tearing force of the Void Gate and disappeared in it. The Void Gate was one of the 3 gates, along with the gate between worlds and the gate of heavenly Dao. The difference was that the Void Gate was born naturally. The gate between worlds was developed by Immortal Zhenyuan, while the gate of heavenly Dao was specially set up by the Heavenly Dao Governing Committee for experts who had comprehended heavenly Dao. Being able to enter the gate of heavenly Dao meant that one had already come into contact with the realm of heavenly Dao. As for the Void Gate, it was more like an erratic secret land in the cultivation world. There were plenty of explorers, but the probability of it appearing was extremely low. Furthermore, it had already been 1,000 years since there had been any new fluctuations. Even the most sophisticated monitoring equipment couldn't accurately detect the Void Gate's location. The last time the Void Gate had appeared was during Master Li's birthday banquet. After punching through the air that day, Master Li had disappeared without a trace. Several hundred years later, Master Li was officially confirmed to be dead. But Master Li's body had never been found, and people's speculations about his death were only based on theory. The density at the very center of the Void Gate was close to that of a black hole. Many people thought that while Master Li's body techniques were formidable, it would be very difficult for him to break free once he was sucked in. Even if his body hadn't been torn apart, he would have starved to death after drifting in space for several hundred years without any supplies. But even so, this master's achievement in materializing energy was still recognized by the world. So every time someone demonstrated the phenomenon of energy materialization, a lot of people couldn't help thinking of Li Shaokai. Even someone like Loopy Toad, who was from the demon world, knew the name Li Shaokai, which showed how influential and famous this master had been back then. Wang Ling didn't stop the Undertaker from showing off his skills. He saw the black energy mist at the Undertaker's feet gradually condense behind him and turn into a pure black phantom. This phantom looked like a malicious spirit with 2 horns on its head and 6 arms. It was an extremely peculiar shape. Substitute attack. Loopy Toad couldn't help crying out in alarm. Wang Ling felt that this wasn't as simple as Loopy Toad thought it was. This was probably similar to the image of a heart demon. Because Shadow Dao had swallowed up the mind, this Undertaker's shadow had become an intelligent life form, and it reflected the most evil heart demon in the Undertaker's heart. Whatever the heart demon looked like, the shadow would look like. Let's call it shadow image for now. Wang Ling silently gave this phenomenon a name in his heart. As for the other people who had been corroded by Shadow Dao, their shadow images should also be different. At that moment, the Undertaker looked at Wang Ling, who was standing blankly on the spot, and laughed. 2 juniors. Didn't your moms tell you not to stroll around the cemetery in the middle of the night? Go, Soul Eater. Swallow them all. As soon as he said this shadow image called Soul Eater roared on the spot and charged at Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. It opened its bloody mouth full of fine black teeth. This power, Wang Ling frowned. Sure enough, Shadow Dao was very powerful, even more so than he had imagined. This attack seemed simple and unadorned, but it was in fact extremely dense. It was more powerful than any expert Wang Ling had ever seen. In other words, this shadow image was far more durable than someone like Evil Sword God. At the very least, Wang Ling felt that he wouldn't be able to kill it with one slap. Furthermore, Wang Ling judged that ordinary physical attacks wouldn't work on this shadow image. What should he do? Should he break it down from the inside? Wang Ling stretched out his muscles and bones, then stretched out his hand to directly pry open the shadow image's mouth and burrow into its belly. Chapter 1071. Although Little Master Ling often did surprising things, Loopy Toad couldn't help being shocked by directly ripping open a person's mouth like this. It hurriedly pounced over and grabbed the corner of Wang Ling's clothes as they crawled into the shadow image's stomach. What astonished both man and dog was that there was actually another world in the shadow image's stomach. This was a great world with its own laws of operation, but it only had 2 colors, black and white. If you used a phone to take a picture, each picture would look like a very beautiful ink painting. Wang Ling was once again stunned by his little sister's masterpiece. Not only could she give other people the ability to cast shadows and activate the shadow image, she could actually see a great world in the shadow image's stomach. Wang Ling now felt like someone who had bought a smartphone for 2,000 yuan on the side of the road, only to find that although it was a street product, it was actually made better than the real thing. What was worse was that when he bought it, he thought it was 16 gigabytes, but when he opened it, it turned out to be 256 gigabytes. It could only be said that Wang Wan's Shadow Dao, as a new great Dao, was constantly surprising Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, 2 colorful people, entered this black and white world, and looked out of place against the backdrop of this environment. There's a very strong evil aura, Loopy Toad said, and it became even more vigilant. It had sensed evil aura outside, and now that it was in the shadow image's world, it realized that this evil aura was even more intense. Wang Ling frowned, then raised his hands to release 2 golden protective lights to protect himself and Loopy Toad. He wasn't affected, but he was still worried that Loopy Toad would be swayed by evil thoughts. Although Wang Ling had taught Loopy Toad to walk the right path, it was, after all, a member of the demon race, and would definitely still have evil thoughts in its heart. One of Shadow Dao's abilities was to stimulate evil thoughts in a depressing atmosphere. If Loopy Toad was invaded by the evil aura here, it would be troublesome for Wang Ling later. The heart demon is here. Wang Ling raised his eyes and looked around as he muttered in his heart. The evil aura that Loopy Toad was talking about was none other than the heart demon entrenched in the shadow image's world. Wang Ling guessed that as long as he pulled out the heart demon and crushed it, the shadow image would directly disappear, and the Undertaker outside would return to normal. He gave this world a name, Shadow Palace. He needed to find the inner demon hidden in the hall. The structure of every Shadow Palace world was built according to the mental state of the shadow image. For example, the Undertaker's Shadow Palace was filled with tombs as far as the eye could see. These graves were not as neatly arranged as those in the graveyard, nor were there any neatly arranged stone tablets. This place looked more like a mass grave with all kinds of burial mounds scattered all over the place, making Wang Ling feel like he was in a horror game. Wang Ling walked up to a grave. On the broken black tombstone were a few crooked words, Wang Lin's grave, Wang Lin. Was it the legendary old demon Wang? Wang Ling's heart trembled slightly, but rumor had it that Wang Ling had died long ago while trying to break through the gate of eternal life, and Wang Lin's existence itself was just a legend. This was because there were only 3 gates in the world, and the gate of eternal life did not exist. On the side, Loopy Toad also saw through this. Demons arise from the heart, this is all fake. In the world of the inner demon, everything is nothing more than an illusion. This is a large world, but what you see isn't real, but a true portrayal of your heart. Although it said this, Loopy Toad was well aware that Little Master Ling was the only one who could resist the erosion of this heart demon. If it had been anyone else, they would have very quickly been assimilated by this heart demon world. One man and one dog continued to explore. Unfortunately, there seemed to be no end to this world. Wang Ling saw all kinds of strangely shaped tombstones, none of which were the same. Activating his king's eye, Wang Ling used his omniscient view to search the entire world, and finally found a dilapidated hut in a corner of this world. Wang Ling led Loopy Toad closer, and then stopped in front of the hut. He could sense a human aura inside. Then, the door was pushed open, and a kind-looking old man walked out of the room. It was the Undertaker Wang Ling had met in the outside world. The old man's back was hunched, and his expression was as calm as ever. "Come in." It was as if he had known that Wang Ling and Loopy Toad were coming, and he didn't look surprised at all. Instead, he let them in. From the first moment Wang Ling saw the old man, he already knew that he was the embodiment of the inner demon. But contrary to Wang Ling's expectations, while the old man had a strong evil aura, there wasn't the slightest bit of murderous intent. After entering the hut, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad found the old man's belongings. "There's nothing else in this hut." The old man sat down on the floor and laughed bitterly. "You were actually able to come in, you really aren't simple." Wang Ling was silent. He also sat down cross-legged and gave Loopy Toad a meaningful look for it to ask questions. Loopy Toad understood Wang Ling's meaning. "Loopy Toad, are you the inner demon, or?" "I am, and I'm not." Unexpectedly, the old man said something ambiguous. "Everyone has a darkness in their hearts. I'm the inner demon. But I'm also a victim." Victim? A person's darkness is suppressed at the bottom of their heart and doesn't come out because of their conscience. I am the conscience in Mr. Li Daiwei's heart. Unfortunately, as you can see, the inner demon has already corroded me. I can't escape from here, and... After saying this, the old man looked around. "Do you see this hut?" From the moment they entered the hut, Loopy Toad had felt that it was strange. After the old man said this, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad divided their attention. In the end, they were astonished to find that the hut was actually slowly shrinking. The size of this hut corresponds to the size of the remaining conscience. As for the graveyard outside this house, it's all the territory that has been eroded by the inner demons. The old man sighed faintly. Before this, the graveyard was not large, and this house was not a house. It was a huge palace. Unfortunately, after Mr. Li Daiwei ate a bag of frozen dumplings a few days ago, the palace was eaten away. In the end, it shrank continuously until it became this rundown hut. This old man who had been living in the palace all this time wasn't spared in the end, and the inner demon took over. The moment this hut is completely corroded, this old man will become a true inner demon. "There should be a way to stop it, right?" asked Loopy Toad. The old man shook his head helplessly. There's no solution. No solution? I'm the conscience that's been invaded by the inner demon. If you kill me, you can indeed kill the inner demon, and it might seem like you've stopped everything. But at the same time, you have to remember that you've also killed the conscience. The old man said, whenever a person's conscience is destroyed, what's the difference between being alive and being dead? Chapter 1072. For Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, this was undoubtedly a dilemma. The conscience of this undertaker had been tainted by the heart demon, and the two had now become one. If they destroyed the old man in front of them, the heart demon would disappear, but the conscience would be swallowed up as well. Wang Ling realized that he couldn't do it, and the situation started to get anxious. The most important thing was that Wang Ling had never encountered this kind of situation before. If he couldn't solve the problem of this old man, even if he found all the people who had eaten the special frozen dumplings, he still wouldn't be able to solve the root of the problem. Furthermore, as time went on, the erosion of the other people's consciences might be stronger than this undertaker's. What should he do? Should he ask the heavenly Tao about the situation? Wang Ling was thinking about how to solve the current predicament. Asking the heavenly Tao was always the right thing to do. Perhaps there was a magic treasure in the heavenly Tao treasure house that could deal with this problem. Thinking this, Wang Ling bit his finger and started to set up a heavenly Tao summoning array in the dilapidated house. The old man didn't know where Wang Ling and Loopy Toad had come from, but seeing that they could actually go so deep into this place, he knew that they weren't ordinary people. Now that he saw Wang Ling set up an array on the ground that he couldn't understand, he was even more shocked. All of this was too frightening. Wang Ling seemed to be the same age as his youngest son, but he could actually do this. A moment later, the heavenly Tao little golden man was summoned again. But this time, it was obvious that he was in pain after being summoned. Heart demon erosion? The little golden men immediately sensed the situation nearby. Each of the heavenly Tao little golden men was an extremely pure individual who symbolized supremacy, light, and holiness. In such a polluted environment, they instinctively felt uncomfortable. It was like a human who had lived in the forest for a long time and suddenly came to a city full of traffic and exhaust fumes. There would always be a feeling of not being able to adapt to it. The house was still shrinking. If even the last bit of conscience was completely eroded by the heart demon, then the only thing that could happen to the old man was destruction. It's too late. The little golden man knew why Wang Ling had summoned him. His whole body shone with golden light, and several large golden hands full of cryptic runes stretched out of the air to hold the walls of the house up. However, this could only delay the erosion of the inner demons and could not completely eradicate the occurrence of such a situation. What now? Loopy Toad couldn't help asking. The little golden man wiped his sweat. Clearly, even the heavenly Tao had not expected the situation to be so tricky. I've been in the heavenly Tao class for several hundred years and can be considered knowledgeable, but why have I never seen this great Tao before? Loopy Toad replied, of course you haven't. This is my master's little sister's great Tao. Although she hasn't been born yet. The little golden man was enlightened. So it was another demon that was born to be a boss, and it was obvious that she was a she-devil. It clearly hadn't been born yet, but it already had this kind of power. It was even more powerful than Wang Ling back then. The little golden man was well aware that it was only when Wang Ling had been born that he had become violent, and had been very well behaved in the womb. Who would have thought that the children he gave birth to would be so troublesome? It was the heavens who wanted to destroy the heavenly Tao. The little golden man sobbed inwardly. Don't cry, is there a solution? Loopy Toad asked. It's actually not uncommon to be invaded by a heart demon. The little golden man straightened his expression and began to analyze the situation. Generally speaking, there are only a few ways to be invaded by a heart demon. The first is cultivation deviation. This kind of heart demon invasion is the most common, as well as the simplest and crudest. The victim's qi and blood will flow in reverse, which will endanger their lives. It may seem very serious, but it's the lowest level of heart demon invasion. As long as there's someone around to protect you, and if you notice a cultivation deviation, you can relieve it with medicine in time. There are levels? Of course there are levels. Every year, the Heavenly Tao Department takes in countless people who die from cultivation deviation. Those who suffer from cultivation deviation are usually missing parts of their 3 souls and 6 spirits. Thus, a large number of them are unable to reincarnate and become humans. There was such a saying, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad had once again learned something new. Then what level is this old man at? Hearing this, the old man couldn't help asking about his condition. He looked very apprehensive and trembled all over. Listen to me slowly, the little golden man said unhurriedly. The little golden man said unhurriedly, a heart demon invasion can be divided into 3 levels. What I experienced just now was level 3, which is also the lowest level. What I'm talking about is level 2. Level 2 heart demon invasion is commonly seen when a Tao heart collapses, and there are many reasons for this. For example, a stock crash, a girlfriend running away, a full health player who didn't get the chess piece he wanted in Go was killed with 1 hit, a lottery number short of 1 place, an author he likes doesn't update, a spinach competitor gets cut like a leak, summer vacation is almost over but he hasn't written a single word on his homework, and so on. In short, the reasons for a Tao heart collapse are complicated and ever-changing, and usually have to do with a person's mental endurance. According to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee's annual statistics, the higher a person's realm, the more likely their Tao heart will collapse. A high realm often means that their self-esteem is stronger than the average person's. Once these people's bottom line is touched by something, they will feel a great sense of defeat, and their Tao heart will collapse. The little golden man said, many cultivators die every year because their Tao heart collapses, but it can also be cured. It can also be brought back with medicine. If you have the bell of purification, one of the Heavenly Tao 33 treasures, you can even instantly cure level 2 and 3 heart demon collapses. As for level 1, the situation is more complicated. The first level of inner demon corruption was a combination of the second and third levels. In other words, the collapse of one's Tao heart occurred at the same time that one's chi deviation occurred. If it was the first level, it would only take a short 10 seconds for a cultivator to die from the first level of inner demon corruption, unless first aid was very timely. This phenomenon is relatively rare. There have been cases? Of course there have been, the little golden man said. For example, the Heavenly Tao Department once received the soul of a cultivator who had been cultivating in seclusion and happened to suffer chi deviation. Before he was completely cured, he sent a message to his family to let them know that he was safe. However, he didn't expect that while he was in seclusion, his fiancée would marry someone else. His Tao heart collapsed and he suffered chi deviation. Then The old man pointed at himself and looked eagerly at the little golden man. You, level 0, the little golden man replied. There's a level 0? This is also the highest level. I decided this after observing the situation. I intend to report to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee and update the ranking system. This level 0 heart demon invasion is much more powerful than I imagined. Chapter 1073. Was he really incurable? Hearing the Heavenly Tao's words, Wang Ling's gaze gradually darkened. Seeing that the old man's last shred of conscience was about to be swallowed up by the heart demon, Wang Ling came up with an idea and decided to give it one last try. He stretched his hand into the air and actually pulled out another old man from the space crack, but this old man wasn't corroded by the heart demon at all. Then, Wang Ling put his other hand on the old man who was about to be swallowed up by the heart demon and used his own body as a bridge to guide the heart demon, splitting the first old man's heart demon in half. This is acid-base neutralization, Wang Ling said. It was a very simple chemical principle. It could be done when combined with Fate Tao. The old man whom Wang Ling had pulled out of the space tunnel just now had been pulled out from another parallel space using Fate Tao. Since the old man's heart demon corrosion was already beyond cure, Wang Ling thought he could use this method to stall for time. In the end, after Wang Ling had done this, the Heavenly Tao little golden man suddenly said, "There's hope." Hope. The heart demon corrosion was already too severe. If it's to this extent, the bell of purification can cure it, the little golden man replied quickly. I'll go to the treasury to get the bell of purification. Don't go through the procedure. No need for a white list. In 10 seconds or so, the little golden man made a hand seal and pressed it on the ground. Smoke suddenly rose from the ground, and a colorful glazed magic seed appeared in front of Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Floating slightly in the air, this seed seemed to have the power to purify all living things, and gave off a pure and holy aura. Compared with the power of the bell of purification, Wang Ling sensed that the great purification spell was far inferior. When all was said and done, it was a super powerful magic treasure, one of the 33 heavenly Tao treasures. Wang Ling sighed in his heart as he picked up the bell of purification with his bare hands. This heavenly Tao treasure didn't put up any resistance in Wang Ling's hands, which made the little golden man apprehensive. If an ordinary cultivator had the chance to encounter a heavenly Tao treasure, as long as it didn't recognize them as its master, they absolutely wouldn't let anyone touch them. In the end, this bell of purification was as obedient as a baby in Wang Ling's hands. Holding the bell of purification, Wang Ling shook it in front of the 2 conscience elders, and the black mist in their bodies dissipated on the spot. The heart demon was completely purified on the spot. After all this was done, Wang Ling stuffed the conscience old man, who had been transferred out of another parallel universe, back in. The old house under their feet also started to shake slightly. In the blink of an eye, the dilapidated house had turned back into a huge palace. Sunlight shone through the windows, and the world outside the palace was full of life. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad were finally relieved. Fortunately, he had learned Fate Tao, otherwise he really wouldn't know what to do in this situation. Can you? The little golden man stared at the bell of purification in Wang Ling's hand and tried to take it back. Of course, he wasn't the kind of person who wouldn't return what he borrowed. 33 supreme treasures of the heavenly Tao. They belonged to the heavenly Tao in the first place, Ling Tu, and Bell, but Wang Ling knew the Tao Ling, the heart demon, and the Heave, which he the of the Ling knew the 33. Tao of it of the Tao of divine. Now that he had solved the problem of the Undertaker, there were still 8 other people waiting for him. Of course, Wang Ling wasn't completely selfless. When he had shaken the bell of purification just now, he thought it sounded pretty nice. He thought that maybe he could give this bell to his little sister as a toy. Wan was too headstrong and easily stirred up trouble. This bell of purification had the effect of dispelling demonic nature and calming anger, so it was perfect for Wan. Thinking this, Wang Ling happily put the bell of purification away. Seeing this scene, the little golden man anxiously stared at it angrily but didn't dare say anything. After returning to the land of heavenly Tao, the little golden man in charge of everything related to Wang Ling was criticized by the 6 main heavenly Tao members of the heavenly Tao governing committee. I didn't do it on purpose. The little golden man felt very wronged. If you think you can get it back, go ask him yourself. I don't want you to think, I want me to think. The 6 main heavenly Tao took turns reprimanding him. I'm the main heavenly Tao, listen to me. Can't get it back? I don't think it's a problem. Even if it is, it's a problem for you people in charge, and you have to solve it. I don't care if I can get it back or not, I have to get it back. I'll say it again. I have to get it back even if I can't. Don't ask me if I can get it back or not, I have to get it back. Do you understand? I have to get it back. If you can't get it back, I think you shouldn't do it anymore, right? A few seconds later, the little golden man burst into tears. Elsewhere, Wang Ling, who had obtained the bell of purification, began the 2nd stage of his purification journey. The Undertaker's problem was solved. The shadow image behind him directly disappeared, and the souls that had been swallowed by the shadow image were released, waiting to enter the cycle of heavenly Tao. Wang Ling's 2nd stop was a hospital in the city center. Wang Ling wasn't unfamiliar with this place, because it was the same hospital that Director Li had worked in back then. He remembered that this was a special economic zone's protective ward, mainly used to isolate patients with special diseases. It was naturally a little strange for Wang Ling to come uninvited in the middle of the night. Fortunately, grenade-throwing senior Immortal had already arranged for Wang Ling to stay here. The Office of Strategic Deception had sent someone to stand guard here, and the person waiting for Wang Ling at his second stop was Little Silver. Master. From afar, Wang Ling saw a silver-haired young man barefoot waving at him. You didn't even put on a disguise and came out just like that? Loopy Toad stared at Little Silver in surprise. Little Silver had always worn a hat when he went out previously to hide the two horns on his head. No need, it's so hot wearing a hat, my horns are cooked in it. Little Silver said. Isn't Neza popular recently? That's right. If someone asks about my horns, I'll say I'm cosplaying as A.O. Bing. Loopy Toad and Wang Ling both sucked in breaths. From a certain point of view, this guy was really a talent. There was no time to lose. As he led the excavator inside, Little Silver introduced the second-person situation. Master, this person's situation is a little special. He's Pica. That's why he's been receiving treatment here. Pica? Then how did he eat that bag of frozen dumplings? I heard from the nurse that he only ate half a mouthful that day before he threw it up. Maybe he didn't throw it all up. Chapter 1074. Wang Ling thought this was good news. Although he had agreed to eat the dumplings, this person was Pica, and his body wasn't very receptive to normal food, so he had only eaten a little. If he had only eaten a little, then the erosion of the heart demon probably wouldn't be too severe. Why did he get Pica? Loopy Toad couldn't help asking as it followed Little Silver to the ward. The patient was a girl who kept talking about losing weight. At first, it was just a cucumber a day, but then she stopped eating. She was so hungry that she didn't want to eat anything, so she suddenly fell in love with coal ash. Coal ash doesn't have much fat, and it's very filling, so the girl ate it happily. In the end, she got poisoned while eating it, and was then sent to the hospital, Little Silver said as he took out his phone to look for photos. This was the information he had obtained from the doctor. Look, this is a picture of the girl when she was healthy, Little Silver said. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad looked at the phone screen. This was a girl with a perfect figure, and had already matured very well. She had put on weight in all the right places. This child doesn't look fat, she doesn't need to lose weight at all. Loopy Toad didn't quite understand why some boys and girls would go to any lengths to lose weight. If you were hungry, you had to eat. Wouldn't it be fine as long as you exercised every day? You couldn't put on weight at all. A healthy diet was the key. As long as you cut off your high intake of fat, eating a healthy diet and exercising properly, maintaining a good figure wasn't a dream. After all, not everyone could be like Wang Ling, who could use his bare hands to rub off the fat on his body like plasticine at any time. For the time being, let's go check on her. Wang Ling looked at the phone screen with an indifferent expression. With the bell of purification in hand, it shouldn't be a problem for him to exorcise the heart demon. A few minutes later, Little Silver led Wang Ling to the ward in the Special Economic Zone. Wang Ling, Little Silver, and Loopy Toad all put on white coats, which were specially made for Loopy Toad. The Office of Strategic Deception had given them a new identity as external doctors. When the head nurse saw Little Silver bring Wang Ling and Loopy Toad over, she looked at Wang Ling's extremely young face and marveled in her heart. You're Dr. Wang, so young. Wang Ling, don't mind him, head nurse. Teacher doesn't like to talk much, so I'll have to trouble you. Little Silver took the initiative to greet the head nurse. Okay. The head nurse nodded blankly. Before Wang Ling and Loopy Toad had arrived, Little Silver had already done all the preparations. Their documents were complete, and their disguises were in place. Even so, the head nurse was still very curious about him. He felt that Dr. Wang was too young and seemed to have a strong personality. He liked to bring a spirit dog with him when he went out to see patients. It was rare to see such a young, handsome, and charismatic doctor. When it came to Wang Ling, the head nurse's imagination instantly ran wild. Please follow me. The head nurse took out her universal magnetic card and led the way. All the rooms in the special ward were separated, and many special patients were treated there. Originally, the girl with pica wouldn't have come here, but after eating the dumplings, she suddenly developed a mental condition for some reason. Not only that, but her appetite has also increased. Although she has started to eat, she has been gluttonous. In a short period of time, her weight has increased by 30 kilograms. The head nurse frowned. We've never seen this kind of condition before, and suspect that it's a special illness, so we've isolated her here for observation and treatment. Wang Ling nodded. He followed the head nurse forward, and when they reached the door of Ward 1306, a girl's hysterical scream rang out from inside. As you can see, the girl has gone crazy again, and is clamoring to eat. The head nurse sighed. The walls of this ward are made of a special memory foam to prevent crazy patients from doing dangerous things like banging their heads against the wall. Even if it's damaged, it can be restored in a short time, and it can absorb water and fire. Since this girl was triggered by the frozen dumplings, what happened to the frozen dumplings? Asked Loopy Toad. They've all been dumped, said the head nurse. Little Silver then added telepathically to Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, "Don't worry, Master. Grenade throwing has already arranged for all the frozen dumplings to be recovered." Wang Ling heaved a sigh of relief at this news. In any case, it was a good thing that the dumplings hadn't continued to flow out. The head nurse swiped the magnetic card at the door, then shrank behind Wang Ling a little fearfully. "Dr. Wang, I'm afraid." Wang Ling, seeing this, Little Silver hurriedly grabbed the head nurse's hand, then turned around and stood in front of her. "Head nurse, Teacher Wang is a neat freak, it's better if you don't touch him." The head nurse resentfully moved her hand away. She knew that it wasn't good for an old cow to eat young grass. But people always had dreams. After hearing the head nurse's thoughts, Wang Ling was speechless. This deranged author had made the female lead of this book a crispy noodle snack, and had even written out Lotus Sundae. As an old cow, what qualifications did you have to compare with Lotus Sun? Lotus Sun wasn't even the female lead, and you wanted to be? This wasn't a dream, it was purely a dream. Ignoring the head nurse's dream, Wang Ling pushed open the door. There was no furniture in this special ward, so it didn't matter how much this girl threw a tantrum inside. Seeing that someone had come, the girl's expression gradually turned crazy. She stared at Wang Ling and sniffed as she muttered incessantly, "Crispy noodle snack, crispy noodle snack, crispy noodle snack." She could smell the scent of crispy noodle snack on Wang Ling. Then, she sniffed Little Silver. "Broccoli, broccoli, broccoli, what skill is this?" Little Silver was startled. The head nurse hiding in the back explained, "Ever since this girl went crazy, it seems she can smell what other people have eaten within a few hours. So that's how it is." Realization dawned on Little Silver. He had indeed eaten broccoli salad with grenade throwing before coming here. It was just that he hadn't expected this kind of odorless thing to actually be smelled out. The girl's eyes gradually turned crazy. She stared at the head nurse hiding in the back and repeated what the head nurse had eaten. "Garlic, garlic, garlic." The head nurse lowered her head and blew on her palm. She had eaten garlic that night, but in order not to disturb other people, she had rinsed her mouth and even used a lot of chewing gum. Who would have thought that the girl would still smell it? Finally, the girl's gaze turned to Loopy Toad. "Shit, shit, shit." At that moment, everyone's eyes turned to Loopy Toad in unison, and all of them looked horrified. Chapter 1075. As the saying went, a dog can't stop eating shit. Although Loopy Toad's soul and body had reached a very high degree of synchronization after it had turned into a dog, it still felt that as a grand demon king of the sky-swallowing Toad clan, its toad nature couldn't be extinguished. But what Loopy Toad hadn't expected was that when it walked down the street and saw a pile of dog shit that looked as fresh as ice cream, for some reason, the thought of licking it sprouted in its mind. This was like a dog that had to lift one leg to pee. It was an impossible reaction. When Loopy Toad was done, it realized that it was already too late, because it had happened so suddenly. Although Loopy Toad had been at Wang Ling's side the whole time, he had only been focused on finding the person who had eaten the 9 special frozen dumplings, and hadn't paid attention to Loopy Toad's situation at his feet. Loopy Toad felt very lucky. After all, this had been a very humiliating act. But Loopy Toad never expected that a crazy girl with pica would actually see through it at this critical juncture. Even the way Little Silver looked at Loopy Toad was different. Senior brother, because Little Silver had come later than Loopy Toad, as Wang Ling's second battle pet, he had already acknowledged his status as junior brother in terms of seniority. It was just that Little Silver had never called Loopy Toad senior brother, and now that he had suddenly called Loopy Toad senior brother, Loopy Toad found it particularly jarring. Loopy Toad, Little Silver, senior brother, no need to explain, we all understand. The head nurse in the back also echoed, a dog can't stop eating shit, everyone understands. Loopy Toad, this time, Loopy Toad realized that it couldn't wash itself clean even if it jumped into the Yellow River. Of course, Wang Ling himself didn't have much of a reaction to Loopy Toad's behavior, and just felt a little disgusted. His top priority now was to save the girl in front of him. There was a crazed look on the girl's face. After analyzing what everyone had eaten in the last few hours, Wang Ling thought that she would pounce on him, but he never expected her to actually shrink into a corner and hug her feet. What's going on? Little Silver asked. Apart from the head nurse, there were only 3 straight men present, and they naturally couldn't understand what the girl was thinking. But seeing that the originally crazed girl had suddenly calmed down, the head nurse understood what she was thinking. She's probably shy, or maybe she wants to appear a little more reserved. Why? Little Silver didn't understand. What's the original purpose of many young girls losing weight? For the sake of beauty. Why did it have to be pretty? In other words, she wanted to find a boyfriend who loved her dearly. Especially for this kind of adolescent girl, the standard for finding a boyfriend was not necessarily money, most of them were still based on looks. When I meet a good-looking guy, I will subconsciously try to be reserved. The head nurse analyzed logically. For example, some girls who usually have a big appetite would become reserved when they go out on a date with a guy. They would even look a little embarrassed when eating in small bites. It's completely different from when I was eating instant noodles in my dorm room. Another example is that young girls sometimes like to hold hands and talk loudly, but as long as a good-looking boy passes by, they will stop talking. The little girl's voice suddenly became softer. Whispering softly, extremely gentle. Realization instantly dawned on Wang Ling, Little Silver, and Loopy Toad, and they started to sigh at the truth in their hearts. Although this head nurse was an old cow preying on young grass, her analysis was still very reasonable. But here was the problem, Wang Ling didn't think he was very handsome now. He had specially adjusted his face. It would be too strange if these young ladies still took a fancy to him like this. Wang Ling walked over and started to turn on the lights in the room. After he turned off a few lights, the girl's shadow image quickly took shape in front of him. It was a shadow image that looked like an ox demon, except that its head was replaced by 2 ice cream cones, and it was holding 2 baguettes in its hands. As the saying went, one's appearance was born from one's heart. Just from the shadow image alone, this was very much in line with the girl's heart. Wang Ling walked over unceremoniously, pried open the shadow image's mouth, and crawled inside to the shadow palace to look for the girl's inner demon. Wang Ling appeared in the same ink and wash style world as before, but it was different from the world of the Undertaker from before. This world, which had been invaded by the inner demon, wasn't made up of a graveyard, but of snack mountains. All kinds of potato chips were piled up together, and there was also a dark chocolate river that ran through the entire world without end. As Wang Ling approached, he could smell a strong fragrance. It had to be said that he was startled by the scenery in this world. After Wang Ling and Loopy Toad took a few steps forward, a huge hotpot mountain appeared in front of them. This was a volcano, but there were a lot of common hotpot dishes like fish balls, beef balls, shrimp dumplings, bamboo wheels, bean curd, and so on at the mouth of the volcano. Although they were all black and white in the style of an ink and wash painting, the food was distinct and gave off a delicious aroma. Just by getting close, one couldn't help drooling. Loopy Toad felt that the situation wasn't good. It had thought that the girl had only eaten a few dumplings, so the erosion shouldn't be so serious. It hadn't expected that the extent of the girl's inner demon erosion would be far more severe than they had imagined. Perhaps this was the result of suppressing it for too long. Because she had been on a diet all this time to lose weight, the girl had constantly suppressed her desire to eat. In the end, this desire had been completely stimulated by a few frozen dumplings. Everything in front of them was high-calorie food, which was taboo for dieters. Loopy Toad didn't dare approach them rashly, and waited for Wang Ling to make a decision. Wang Ling braced himself and searched this world for clues about the Shadow Palace. In the Undertaker's world, the Undertaker's Shadow Palace had been a house, but what was the girl's Shadow Palace like? Maybe it was something to eat? Wang Ling made some kind of guess. He used the king's eye to search the area, but in the end found nothing. There wasn't anything like a house in this world, so the girl had probably hidden her Shadow Palace in some kind of food. Loopy Toad searched behind Wang Ling, but in the end realized that their search seemed to be a little off track. As they walked, Loopy Toad realized that Wang Ling was actually walking toward a forest of crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling looked up at the crispy noodle snacks forest, which was actually full of crispy noodle snack fruit trees. Crispy noodle snack packets grew out of the branches like apples. Loopy Toad was stupefied. Who could stand this? Chapter 1076. The moment the forest of crispy noodle snacks appeared, Loopy Toad realized that the situation was gradually starting to spiral out of control. Although this forest of crispy noodle snacks was a manifestation of the heart demon, everything in front of it was too real. Even from a long distance away, Loopy Toad could smell the aroma of crispy noodle snacks and pepper wafting out of the forest. It knew its little masterling too well. How could he resist this kind of temptation? No. I have to think of something. Looking at Wang Ling, who was gradually becoming absent-minded, Loopy Toad bit down on his trouser leg and started to drag him backward. But Wang Ling was so strong that Loopy Toad realized that it couldn't stop him at all. It bit down hard on Wang Ling's trouser leg as it was dragged along the ground with its head, plowing a deep gully in the ground. No, it had to ask for help. Loopy Toad gritted its teeth and took out an immortal seal. This was a gift from Immortal Jinyuan back then, and it could summon him to the scene when necessary. In this situation, the fastest way Loopy Toad could think of to ask for help was to summon Jinyuan to the scene. Little Silver stood guard outside and couldn't come in. This was to prevent the girl from doing anything unusual. Natural Tao. Seal done. Loopy Toad shouted inwardly. After injecting spirit energy into it, the Jinyuan immortal seal very quickly erupted with powerful spirit power. Energy condensed in the air and finally turned into a human figure in the air. As always, Immortal Jinyuan had a head of red hair and was wreathed in red spirit light as he descended from the heavens. Immortal Jinyuan cultivated the positive yang original art, which was a god-level fire technique. It had a miraculous effect on exorcising demons and ghosts. After the appearance of the heart demon world, the originally dark world seemed to have a little more luster. Senior Dog. Jinyuan came over from a distance to greet Immortal Jinyuan. He was still working on Drought Star, and had been hoping that Senior Dog would summon him to do odd jobs for it. Who would have thought that after so many days, Senior Dog would finally remember him? This kind of excitement was no different from a missing-up master remembering the password to his own video website. Immortal Jinyuan looked around excitedly, and then his entire body froze. The heart demon world, although he did not know about the Shadow Palace, he immediately realized that the element that formed this world was the heart demon. When it came to inner demons, Jinyuan himself had experienced them. Back then, he had separated his inner demon, Wind Spirit, because of his inner demons, and in the end, he had personally destroyed it. That melancholy was still vivid in Jinyuan's mind. Dealing with an inner demon was scary enough. Not to mention this world made up of inner demons. Come. Loopy Toad didn't say anything unnecessary, and immediately called for Jinyuan to pull Wang Ling over. It already couldn't hold on much longer, but when it remembered that it was Senior Dog in front of Jinyuan, it automatically switched to a commanding tone. Last time, Loopy Toad had borrowed Wang Ling's tiger might to help Jinyuan eliminate Wind Spirit. Since then, Jinyuan had always regarded it as his senior, and had even revered it as a divine dog. Alright, senior dog. There's no need for senior to handle such a small matter. I'll do it. In the next moment, Jinyuan straightaway made a move. Because he firmly believed that he had this senior dog behind him, he acted without the slightest misgivings. Heaven Sun Lock. He made a hand seal at the speed of light, and his slender knuckles changed continuously like a blooming fire lotus. In a split second, several golden discs appeared in the sky, and blazing red gold chains of fire abruptly emerged from them to firmly grasp Wang Ling's ankles. The Heaven Sun Lock was one of Immortal Jinyuan's self-confidence magic treasures, which could suppress powerful spirit beasts, demon beasts, and even extremely fierce beasts. This was the self-confidence of a man who focused on creating magic treasures. When it came to creating magic treasures, Wang Ling actually also agreed with Jinyuan a lot. After all, this was the man who had created the gate between worlds. If it hadn't been for the gate, Loopy Toad wouldn't have met Wang Ling. If it hadn't met Wang Ling, Loopy Toad felt that it probably wouldn't be where it was now at all. It had already hit a bottleneck when it was a demon king. If this situation continued, the sky-swallowing Toad clan might be swallowed up by the other demon clans sooner or later. It could be said that the karma of the gate between worlds had changed the outcome of a lot of things. Thus, Loopy Toad was extremely confident in the Heaven Sun Lock which Jinyuan had created. Even if it couldn't hold little Master Ling back, it could at least buy him some time, right? Since little Master was still sealed, in theory, Loopy Toad should have been able to forcibly subdue Wang Ling before he was completely released. But as it turned out, the process was far more difficult than Loopy Toad had imagined. Just as the chain latched onto Wang Ling's ankle, a protective golden light directly pulverized it into powder. My Heaven Sun Lock. Jinyuan's heart was broken. The Heaven Sun Lock was his proudest creation, which he had spent a long time searching for materials in the universe to complete. But this youngster was actually able to shatter Loopy Toad's Heaven Sun Lock with just his protective golden light? This was a little unexpected for Jinyuan. It looked like Senior Dog had found him a very good opponent this time. Perhaps this was Senior Dog's test for him? He had to put on a good show. This youngster's abnormal behavior of walking uncontrollably toward the forest of crispy noodle snacks was a classic sign that he had been corrupted by a heart demon. Perhaps he had been corrupted by this world's heart demon? In that instant, Jinyuan thought of many complicated possibilities. Looking at Wang Ling's young face, he couldn't help sighing in his heart. In the end, this was still a youngster who didn't come out into the world, and couldn't withstand the pressure of this environment at all. Jinyuan smiled regretfully in his heart. Now that he knew that the youngster couldn't control his body because of a heart demon, the rest was very easy to handle. Thinking this, Jinyuan unhurriedly took out a second magic treasure. Loopy Toad noticed that it was actually a lighter. Senior Dog, this is the fire of the universe I collected when I wandered the universe. It contains holy power that can purify a heart demon. Why a lighter? This is the legendary nuclear lighter. And I also have a nuclear flashlight with it. Is it effective? Loopy Toad questioned. The heart demon here was formed from Shadow Dao, and even the great purification spell had no effect. But this was Loopy Toad's first time seeing the fire of the universe. This was a kind of rainbow flame which was refined from the core flames of various stars in the depths of the universe. Since things had come to this point, Loopy Toad had no other choice but to let Jinyuan give it a try first. Don't worry, Senior Dog, this fire of the universe will automatically purify the heart demon. Pa! Jinyuan aimed at Wang Ling and pressed the button on the nuclear lighter. The fire of the universe had its own intelligence, and the moment it scuttled out of the lighter, it confidently lunged at Wang Ling. But before it was halfway there, Jinyuan was astonished by a scene. The little seven-colored flame actually retracted back into the lighter and shivered. Jinyuan? The fire of the universe was actually scared to this extent? Who on earth did Senior Dog want him to deal with? Chapter 1077. The situation was far beyond Immortal Jinyuan's expectations. The fire of the universe was one of the most intelligent flames in the universe, and logically speaking, it wouldn't be frightened under normal circumstances. But the fire of the universe was actually afraid. Immortal Genuine found it inconceivable. Senior Dog, who on earth is this senior? Now that things had come to this, Loopy Toad felt that it could no longer hide its identity as a senior, so it could only tell Genuine the truth. This is my master. This youngster was actually Senior Dog's master. Sure enough, Genuine was gobsmacked. Senior Dog was already strong enough, then wouldn't its master be ridiculously strong? Looking at Genuine's surprised but not angry expression, Loopy Toad also found it inconceivable. You're not angry? Why would I be? Genuine raised his eyebrows. I've already seen Senior Dog's strength. Since this youngster is Senior Dog's master, he must be even stronger than Senior Dog. What I, Genuine, love the most in my life is to make friends with strong people. Senior Dog thought of me at this critical moment and even introduced me to its master, which proves that it views me as family. I can't wait to be grateful. Why would I blame it? Loopy Toad was stunned. So this was what this guy was thinking. He didn't suspect at all that Loopy Toad had deceived him. When all was said and done, this was the first human to reach the venerated immortal level. It was no wonder that he had such a pure mind. In comparison, Loopy Toad felt that it was really too evil. Furthermore, this was probably one of the reasons why it hadn't transformed into a human form yet. Seeing Wang Ling walk forward step by step, Genuine's expression turned serious. Since this is Senior Dog's master, we can only use extreme measures. If Senior Dog can't stop him, we might have a glimmer of hope if we join forces. Loopy Toad was lost in thought. It really couldn't bear to give Genuine a blow, because even if they joined forces, there was no hope at all. If Loopy Toad was really strong, at Little Silver's level for example, they might be able to stop Wang Ling together. But now, it really couldn't. Loopy Toad was still hesitant. If they really fought, it would be completely exposed. It would lay down all its dignity in front of Genuine, and might even be despised by him. What should it do in this situation? Loopy Toad grit its teeth as it watched Wang Ling descend into the forest of crispy noodle snacks created by his heart demon. Perhaps, he could give it a try. It would use the true meaning of Sword Dao that Wang Ling had passed on to it, and combine it with all the skills it had now, to block the way. It had already lived by Wang Ling's side for more than half a year, and Loopy Toad already felt that it couldn't ignore the bond between master and servant. It couldn't abandon Wang Ling and allow him to fall into his inner demon. It would never abandon Wang Ling at any time. Go. Despite its hesitation, Loopy Toad clenched its teeth and started to circulate all the spirit energy in its body. It already didn't care what Genuine thought of it after it exposed its true strength, let alone whether it would lose its dignity. It only cared about Wang Ling. It didn't want to watch helplessly as Wang Ling was corroded by the heart demon. Thus, at that moment, Loopy Toad exploded with all the power in its body. It activated Sword Dao and boosted it with the improved Demon King Heart Sutra, releasing its spirit chi from every pore on its body. In the blink of an eye, Loopy Toad's green dog fur fluttered despite the lack of wind, and green steam began to seep out of its body. Sword Dao was also a kind of heavenly Dao, which Wang Ling had stripped from evil Sword God and given to Loopy Toad as a gift. Loopy Toad never thought it would actually come in handy in a place like this. It had been painstakingly cultivating Sword Dao for the past few months, and perhaps it hadn't realized its power, but now that it had released all of its power, the steam rising from its body still startled Loopy Toad. Energy materialization was also a phenomenon that Loopy Toad was experiencing. As expected, Senior Dog is powerful. Looking at this scene, Genuine sighed in his heart. To be honest, he had also wondered before whether Loopy Toad wasn't as strong as he had imagined, but now it looked like he had been worrying too much. It was actually able to combine the true meaning of Sword Dao with its teeth. This wasn't a power that an ordinary person could possess. But this Senior Dog hadn't just combined them, it had done so brilliantly that it was already so powerful that it could materialize energy, which completely dispelled Genuine's doubts about Loopy Toad. But dispelling his doubts was one thing, and Loopy Toad was well aware of its own capabilities. Estimating its current total battle strength, if it went all out and stacked with Genuine's battle strength, it would just barely be able to withstand 3 of Wang Ling's attacks while Zhen Yuan was still sealed. In other words, it would die if it took 3 slaps. This unit of measurement was already a lot better than evil sword gods. But now, Wang Ling didn't have any intention of attacking, so their lives naturally weren't in danger. But holding Wang Ling back was still as difficult as ascending to heaven. Guard me. Even so, Loopy Toad didn't intend to give up. It barked an order at Zhen Yuan and moved at a high speed to charge forward again and bite the leg of Wang Ling's pants. The true meaning of Sword Dao was instantly unleashed by Loopy Toad's teeth, and a Sword Dao array appeared in the air, 7 swords descending the heavenly mountain. Like the teeth of a dog, 7 swords of light descended in a crisscross pattern to instantly form a cage around Wang Ling. Success. Strengthen the seal. Loopy Toad continued to exert force, and the green dog fur on its body danced like flames. Senior dog, I'm coming. On the other side, Zhen Yuan and Loopy Toad worked together exceptionally well. The moment the 7 swords descending the heavenly mountain was unleashed, the Zhen Yuan Dharma seal was completed, and a huge jade seal fell from the sky through a space tunnel. Celestial Emperor's Jade Seal. This was another magic treasure that Zhen Yuan was confident in, and it had a powerful suppressive effect. Furthermore, Zhen Yuan's blood essence was sealed inside this jade seal. A drop of venerated immortal blood was as heavy as half a planet, and when combined with the Celestial Emperor's Jade Seal, the suppressive effect was extraordinary. Loopy Toad was extremely excited. Its excitement made all the blood in its body circulate faster. Then, all of a sudden, Loopy Toad felt a strange power emerge inside its body. This was a human form? Was it finally going to cultivate a human form? Loopy Toad was excited. It never thought that this battle would actually indirectly open up its blocked meridians, and in this moment after its long-awaited wish, its human form would finally appear. Loopy Toad was so happy that it couldn't close its mouth. A few seconds later, it transformed into a green-haired young man with cute little canine teeth, just like a magical girl. At that moment, Wang Ling, who was being suppressed by the Celestial Emperor's Jade Seal and the 7 swords descending the heavenly mountain seal, finally breathed a sigh of relief. This dog finally took human form. He was too tired from acting. Chapter 1078. The King's Eye had the power to get rid of the false and retain the true. Although the Shadow Palace world created by Shadow Dao's inner demon was rife with inner demons, and the food looked so real and gave off an irresistible aroma, under Wang Ling's King's Eye, everything was exposed in its true form. For Wang Ling to fall for a mere inner demon illusion in the Shadow Palace world was underestimating his ability as an immortal king too much. A large part of the reason why Wang Ling had pretended to fall for it was that after entering this world, he had sensed that the spirit power in Loopy Toad's body had already reached a critical point, and it just needed an opportunity to break through. Thus, Wang Ling had directed and acted out this play himself. It was just that Wang Ling hadn't expected the price of his self-directing and acting to attract Zhen Yuan. As a baby, it would be a lie if Wang Ling didn't feel bitter. The principle of keeping a low profile couldn't be changed, so of course the fewer people who knew Wang Ling's identity, the better. Grenade throwing had only gained Wang Ling's approval after many years of testing. But he also didn't know much about Wang Ling's actual situation. There weren't many outsiders who truly knew about Wang Ling's situation, and Odd Zhua was the only human disciple. Odd Zhua had been pursuing Wang Ling for many years, and was a tight-lipped person who was very particular about his word. Wang Ling had finally decided to accept Odd Zhua as his disciple after many tests. It definitely wasn't because of those crispy noodle snack packets. Of course not. Hooray! Hooray! But Zhen Yuan's appearance now threw the situation into a momentary awkwardness. After all, Zhen Yuan was a venerated immortal and had been named a legendary cultivator on Earth. Although his realm level was a little lower than that of Wang Zhen's in the domain of the gods, he was still a true expert. In short, it was true that he wasn't easy to fool. After Dog 2 evolved into a human form, Wang Ling knew that his acting was almost over, so he put away his appearance of having been invaded by the inner demon. Seeing this, Loopy Toad hurriedly urged Jinyuan to cancel the sealing spell. While the Heavenly Emperor Jade's seal was very strong, it would in fact be pure fantasy for it to overwhelm Wang Ling. If it wasn't for the fact that Wang Ling had to go all the way through the act, he could have blown the Heavenly Emperor Jade's seal away with just one breath. Loopy Toad transformed back into its dog form and ran over to check on Wang Ling, and heaved a sigh of relief when it saw that he was fine. It was scared to death by Wang Ling. But at the same time, Loopy Toad had its own doubts. How could such an evildoer like Little Master Ling let a heart demon enter his body so easily? Senior Dog, I think you're more handsome in human form. Jinyuan also came over and started to shower it with praise. I think so too, but I'm not wearing any clothes. Loopy Toad laughed and broke out in a cold sweat. His human form, other than the fact that his hair was green, was even more handsome than he had imagined. It was a pity that he was not wearing any clothes, and it was not very elegant for him to be dangling in the air. For a moment, Wang Ling was silent. The main thing was that Wang Ling was thinking about how to face Jinyuan. Wang Ling couldn't imagine what would happen if he got involved with this cultivator, who was hailed as a legend on Earth. School was about to start, and Wang Ling wanted to sort out his little sister's mess before that so that he could spend his first year of high school in peace. But what Wang Ling had never expected was that it seemed like trouble was coming one after another like dominoes. It was as if everything had collapsed from the very beginning and could no longer be stopped. Senior. Jinyuan took the initiative to greet him. It seemed like a simple greeting, but the moment he said it, Wang Ling was pulled into another space. This was the wonderful sound technique, a spell that combined space and sound. When it was used, it could instantly pull a person into an independent spiritual space, which was soundless and impossible to guard against. Of course, Wang Ling wouldn't fall for it. No one could invade Wang Ling's spiritual world at will. He just wanted to see what on earth Jinyuan wanted to say after using this technique on him. But then again, Wang Ling felt a little uncomfortable being pulled into a space as soon as they met. The red-haired young man in the spiritual space looked calm and composed as he faced Wang Ling. In a confrontation between experts, they often didn't show their emotions on the surface. Even if they were panicking to death, they would still look calm and at ease. Senior, you deliberately went berserk, right? Jinyuan's words hit the nail on the head. From his previous contact with Jinyuan, Wang Ling knew that this guy was a straightforward person who didn't like to beat around the bush. Actually, this was pretty good. It saved Wang Ling the trouble of making wild guesses. Wang Ling fell into a brief silence at these words. He didn't deny it, which was tacit agreement. I knew it. Jinyuan sighed with emotion. Senior, I want to ask you for a favor, Wang Ling. It's like this, Senior, I've been working on restoring Drought Star. After exterminating Wind Spirit, I've been deep in thought. As a true expert in the cultivation world, I've been thinking about how to face life and the future path of cultivation. Senior Dog's appearance has given me a lot of inspiration. What Jinyuan said next completely shocked Wang Ling. I know that Senior deliberately went berserk to provoke Senior Dog into displaying its true strength. Face your human form bravely, right? That wasn't right at all, okay? He was clearly the one who had provoked Loopy Toad to turn into a human. Loopy Toad hadn't been able to take a human form from the beginning. Why did it suddenly turn out that he was the one who had helped it regain its confidence? What kind of operation was this? I know, Senior. You don't have to say anything else. Senior Dog's human form. I know that green hair made Senior Dog lose its confidence a little. Furthermore, Senior Dog's human form is a little, actually, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but I still want to say. What is a little? Wang Ling's curiosity was piqued. A little, short, as a man, it's normal for him to lack confidence when he's so short in human form. Jinyuan sighed slightly. But I didn't expect Senior to actually use goading to help Senior Dog regain its confidence. Seeing Senior Dog throw itself forward to save you without any regard for its own safety, I was very touched. So, based on the above, I have a presumptuous request. Speaking up to this point, Jinyuan finally got down to business. Senior, please accept me as your disciple and let me learn from you. Tianjin. Chapter 1079. Another person who wanted to learn from him. Wang Ling was silent. It was just the summer break, but there were too many people who wanted to learn from him. First it was Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi, then Gu Xuanji came knocking on their door, and now there was Jinyuan. For the time being, he would arrange for all of them to enter number 60 high school first. After cleaning up the mess left behind by his little sister Wang Muan, Wang Ling sent Odd Zhuo a text message and asked him to arrange for Jinyuan's enrollment. Although Wang Zhen and the others had already finished their transfer test, it was still possible to pull some strings and let Jinyuan in. Of course, there was only one request, and that was to not let Jinyuan enter Wang Ling's class as much as possible. As everyone knew, cultivation schools started at different times than regular high schools. It was finally number 60 high school's turn on November 4th. After the second half of the summer break and the teachers' efforts, number 60 high school's fragmented jade scroll of school history was recovered before the general administration of 100 schools submitted it for review. With number 60 high school's application to become a key city cultivation high school, the second semester of senior grade 1 welcomed new transfer students. There were 2 in Wang Ling's class alone. Next, I'd like to introduce 2 new students to our class. Everyone, give us a round of applause to welcome student Gu and student Zhen. After teacher Pan said this, the whole class immediately applauded in unison. Student Gu was Gu Xuanji, and student Zhen was naturally Jinyuan. This was the fake identity that Odd Zhuo had arranged for Jinyuan, Jinyuan. It was named after Jinyuan, which was a homonym for his name. After the applause, there was a lot of private discussion. Both of them are so handsome. One look and you can tell that the one with glasses is a top student, and the one with red hair, doesn't he look like some kind of visual idol star? Feather Lin stared blankly at Gu Xuanji and Jinyuan in front of the stage. In her mind, she was already imagining an indescribable story between these 2 men. If Fujoshi's thinking was indeed terrifying, Wang Ling turned his gaze away and looked out the window with a lack of interest. Through the refraction of the glass, he could clearly see that Jinyuan and Gu Xuanji were both staring in his direction. Before school started, teacher Pan had always had the habit of killing the chicken to warn the monkey, in order to calm the crowd. This year, the chicken spot clearly fell on Gu Xuanji and Jinyuan. Teacher Pan first looked at Gu Xuanji. His hair was of a reasonable length and he looked refreshingly dressed. Because there hadn't been time to issue him a school uniform yet, this student Gu had specially chosen a set of blue tracksuits to blend in with number 60 high's environment without being too conspicuous. But since this was the chicken who had been killed at the beginning of the semester to warn the monkeys, Wang Ling felt that teacher Pan's ability to nitpick was something Wang Ling couldn't hope to match. Student Gu, I know you did well in the transfer test. He was ranked first in the entire school on the enrollment list. But you still have to be humble, you know? Look at you, you're so tall that I can't even reach your shoulders. As a kind-hearted man, can't you be a little more considerate of your teacher's feelings? There are quite a few female students in our class. As a good student, you should set an example in the future. Understand? Old Pan's tone sounded as gentle as the spring breeze and rain, but in fact, a lot of the students could tell that she was deliberately nitpicking because she had nothing else to say. Of course, teacher Pan also had another purpose, which was to test this student Gu's character. As the teacher in charge, teacher Pan naturally had to figure out their personalities and formulate different policies to deal with different situations, and quickly draw them into the large group environment of the class, since they had just arrived and were unfamiliar with the other students in the exchange meeting. In teacher Pan's view, Gu Xuanji's performance was really perfect. Very well, teacher, I understand. Gu Xuanji smiled so gently that teacher Pan actually felt like she was in love for the first time. You can go. Teacher Pan was speechless. She pointed to the last seat in the middle row and hurriedly dismissed Gu Xuanji. A transfer student with a good temper and a good personality, it was really rare. But now, teacher Pan wasn't worried about Gu Xuanji at all, and instead started to worry about the other female students in the class. Such an outstanding child in all aspects was definitely a catalyst for puppy love. The current cultivation world had a more liberal view of love, and there weren't that many rules and regulations as long as one paid attention to safety. But Old Pan was a more traditional person. She also valued grades more. She wasn't opposed to puppy love, but if it affected grades, Old Pan would definitely put a stop to it. Teacher Pan pondered this deeply in her heart. It looked like she would have to pay attention to the other students in the class for a while. After speaking about Gu Xuanji, Teacher Pan turned her gaze to Jinyuan next to him. After comparing Jinyuan with Gu Xuanji, Jinyuan's image in Teacher Pan's heart had already directly dropped below the 60 mark. Student Zhen, I know your grades are also very good. You ranked second this time, but you should also know this, right? Our school doesn't allow students to dye their hair. And what's with those earrings in your ears? You're a boy, but you have more jewelry than me. Teacher Pan scolded him in public. It was only at that moment that Jinyuan realized his problem. He had been so focused on learning from Wang Ling that he had forgotten that he was already a high school student in this environment. He had grown his red hair for a long time, and was already used to it. It just looked a little unconventional. As for the earrings, this was another of Jinyuan's mystical ear studs, which was a powerful restraining magic weapon and a very practical defensive magic treasure. Realizing that he was in the wrong, Jinyuan took off the earrings of his own accord and then explained to Teacher Pan about his hair. Teacher, I'm really sorry, my hair is always red because of my fire cultivation technique. Even if I dye it black, I'll change it back when I sleep. This doesn't count as dyeing my hair, right? But I know that my hairstyle might not be very good, so I'll do it after school. Is it because of your cultivation technique? Teacher Pan was skeptical. It could only be said that as a pioneer teacher at number 60 high, Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan. With many years of teaching experience, she immediately thought of an idea for Jinyuan. How about this, Student Zhen? You can directly shave your head bald, so you don't have to worry about your hair color. Since our school is a big group, we naturally have to be united. In fact, Teacher Pan's words weren't absolute. If Jinyuan wasn't willing, she could actually take a step back. Previously, there had been cases of students in other classes running away from home because of their hairstyles after quarreling with their parents and teachers, and Teacher Pan didn't want that to happen again. But the outcome was beyond her expectations once again. It was hard for her to imagine that this student Zhen would actually have an unusually good temper, and she hurriedly agreed. Teacher Pan, don't worry, I'll do it after school today. In the back of the classroom, Wang Ling sighed emotionally in his heart as he listened to Jinyuan's words. Whether it was Jinyuan or Gu Xuanji, these were two men who stood at the top of the cultivation world. They were already calm and unperturbed in the face of mortal affairs. Old Li was long past the age of rebellion, and just now, Wang Ling had also figured something out. He realized that the arrival of Gu Xuanji and Jinyuan had drawn a lot of attention from the class. As a result, his presence had become even lower. Perhaps the addition of these two people wasn't as bad as he had thought. Chapter 1080. The workload for grade 2 classes started to become heavy. After the summer break, the school administration office held a meeting with all the teachers, and proposed that the first task was to quickly get the students back to their senses a week before the start of the semester, so that they could return from their relaxed state of summer break to the atmosphere of sprinting for the college entrance exam. There were still 2 years between grade 1 and grade 3, and based on the frequency of updates and the number of chapters, there were still over 3,000 chapters before the author would write the college entrance exam plot, but even so, schoolwork was still the most important thing. The second half of the first year of high school was no longer that easy, because most schools would let the students finish the content of the second year of high school in the second half of the first year of high school, and in the second year of high school, they would let the students finish the homework of the third year. In grade 3, it was endless rehashing of cold rice. They had to do all the exercises over and over again, and as long as they didn't die from them, they would do it to death. This was grade 3. Apart from doing exercises, Grade 3 students in cultivation schools also had to take cultivation exams, such as spirit sword control exams, magic treasure operation exams, elixir refining exams, talisman drawing exams and so on. After Teacher Pan finished lecturing them that day, Little Peanut came out of the office with a stack of brochures and handed them out to everyone. "What's this?" someone asked. "Last year's Cultivation University enrollment brochures," Little Peanut replied. "Why are you distributing this?" "Old Pan said to show you the cutoff points for first-rate cultivation universities," Little Peanut said. Wang Ling flipped open the first page. A tightly packed form came into view. This was a form with the lowest cutoff points, and the number at the end corresponded to the page number of each school's enrollment brochure. Currently, the number 1 cultivation university was Jinghua 7-Star Academy, minimum cutoff point, 209,300. Second was Jinghua Sword Immortal Academy, minimum cutoff point, 199670. Third was Northern Swallow Lark Academy, minimum cutoff point, 199,400. The top 3 were all at the minimum cutoff point of almost 200,000, which would make anyone's heart tremble. Wang Ling felt that if he didn't hold back his grades and performed normally, he could easily get into any of these 3 universities, but doing so would violate the Wang family's teachings. He didn't have the final say on what kind of university he would get into. In the end, it was up to Father and Mother Wang. Actually, Wang Ling didn't know what to do. In this dazzling array of cultivation academies, there were almost no universities that could truly teach him anything new. Wang Ling had once fantasized about university life. Like the college entrance examination, it was an important experience in life. Perhaps it was not necessary, but if he did not go, he might regret it for the rest of his life. On the side, Super Chin and a few others were looking at the admissions brochure and discussing it. Language, mathematics, physics, chemistry, arts, and sciences. These 7 subjects are worth 20,000 points each. The total score for the cultural subjects is 140,000 points. Talismans, swordsmanship, magic treasures, elixirs, cultivation history. These were collectively known as cultivation studies, and there were a total of 12 points. The full score adds up to 260,000. "How many points do you think we can get now?" Dopigwa stared at the recruitment brochure in his hand and could not help but sink into deep thought and worry. "My current level is at most 150,000 points, which is just enough for 2 books. I still have to work harder." Super Chin sighed. In fact, at the beginning of the semester, Super Chin had already expressed his ambition, and his goal was to become a 7-star cultivator. However, he was still a full 50,000 points short of the target cutoff point. To make up for this gap, apart from scoring as many points as possible in the cultural subjects, he couldn't fall behind in any other aspect of cultivation studies. Of the 120,000 points in cultivation studies, he had to get the full 100,000 points. But how could 100,000 points be easy? "Hey, I remember that there were bonus points in previous years." "Yes, there are bonus points, but the conditions for bonus points are very harsh." "Look at the back of this admissions brochure," said Little Peanut. Everyone flipped to the back, and sure enough, there were several clear explanations for the bonus points policy. First, those who help the Cultivation Police or the Immortal Arts Mobile Squad maintain law and order during high school and receive an honorary cultivator medal will get bonus points. A third-class medal will get you 1,000 points, a second-class medal will get you 3,000 points, a first-class medal will get you 5,000 points, and a maximum of 5 medals can be stacked. I know the first one. Back then, it seems my dad relied on this to get 1,000 points, said Super Chin. What did your dad do? When he went to the market to buy groceries, he caught a fugitive in passing. Then, he got a third-class medal. Super Chin laughed. But my dad was lucky. The fugitive was already exhausted from being chased, and just happened to escape to the market. My dad was just lucky. Come on, let's not talk about your dad, let's look at the next one. Dopigwa said. Second, those who receive a state-level special honorary certificate in high school will get bonus points. After passing the review, they will get 10,000 points. Everyone, next, this is too difficult. Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Everyone had always thought that getting a special honorary certificate was enough. There was no way it would ever happen. The probability of getting a special honorary certificate was even lower than the probability of an online friend finding out that the person looked exactly like the person in the photo. Only Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan fell silent as they stared at this rule. To be honest, these two old people actually shouldn't have come to join in on the fun, but after all, they had come with the goal of learning from Wang Ling. Since Wang Ling was going to take the college entrance examination, they definitely couldn't avoid it. Given their strength, it wouldn't be difficult for them to get full marks. But the point was that they still wanted to go to the same university as Wang Ling, thus, keeping their marks down was the problem they had to deal with now. The high school cultivation knowledge was too simple for the two of them. How about we just skip the exam and directly take the certificate as our marks? It seems like it'll be easier to keep our marks down. At that moment, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan cupped their chins as they thought of the same idea. Finally, everyone turned their attention to the third-point policy, which was also the last point of the entire policy. Third, those who break through to the foundation establishment stage in high school will get bonus points. Golden Core Stage, 10,000 points. Nascent Soul Stage cultivators don't need to take the college entrance examination and can freely choose their schools. They can directly enroll after being approved by the General Administration of 100 schools. Everyone, is there anyone who breaks through to the Nascent Soul Stage in high school? Everyone stared at the form and looked at each other. Impossible. If there really was such a genius, why would they still be in high school? There are definitely people like that, it's just that our horizons are too narrow and we don't understand what it means to be a genius. At that moment, Super Chen suddenly said, sometimes, I've always suspected that there are people like that around us. They're clearly big shots, but they're quietly hiding in the crowd as ordinary people. Jin Yuan, Gu Xuanji, Wang Ling. Chapter 1081. Man is a very strange creature. When you were at school, you missed the holidays, and when you were on holiday, you often missed school. It was said that school was the most relaxing time, because there wasn't so much social and life pressure, and you didn't have to rack your brains over getting married, buying a house, a car, and so on. Sometimes, it was only after you graduated from university and officially entered society and started working that you could recall your school days. Whether it was primary school, middle school, or high school, there were always some fragmented memories of good times. These memories would linger in your mind like old photos, and every time you felt irritable, they would flash through your mind and soothe your restless heart. An adult's downfall began with giving up on his figure. And a student's downfall began with giving up on learning. As Wang Ling had expected, Teacher Pan had been intensely preparing her package of mind control plans on the first day of school. At noon, Wang Ling, Hirogua, Little Peanut, Lotus Sun, Super Chen, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan were called to an empty classroom by Teacher Pan for a regular class committee meeting. Hirogua was the political science representative, Super Chen was the physical education committee member, Lotus Sun was the class monitor and Little Peanut was the commissary in charge of studies. As for the newcomers, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan, it seemed that Teacher Pan was going to assign them new tasks because of their excellent academic performance. Wang Ling didn't know why he had to participate. He wasn't a class committee member, but since Teacher Pan had called him, he could only give her face and go. After all, he still had to stay in school, it wouldn't be good to offend the teacher in charge. I've called everyone here this time because I want to explain to you how things are going in class. Everyone present was a middle and upper class student, and they played the role of a leader. School has just started, and I know that everyone is probably still immersed in the atmosphere of the summer vacation, but I also want you to be clear that there are less than 800 days left until the college entrance examination. In the blink of an eye, you'll be sent to the front lines on the battlefield. Teacher Pan said passionately, her blood boiling. Everyone, the first thing is for the newcomers, Student Gu and Student Zhen. The results of the two of them in the entrance test were quite good, given their specialties. Given their specialties, I now appoint Student Gu as our class representative for Magic Treasures and Student Gu as our class representative for Swordsmanship. Of course, this is also in accordance with your wishes. I will fully respect your choice. Teacher Pan stared eagerly at the two of them. Very well, teacher. Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan nodded. Since he had already put it this way, they naturally had no reason to refuse. The truth was that Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan had already tested Teacher Pan as early as the entrance test. They couldn't understand why a big shot like Wang Ling would deign to study under a golden core cultivator like Teacher Pan. There had to be something special about her. They hadn't noticed it before. But now, it seemed that Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan could tell. Although this Teacher Pan's realm was far below theirs, she had an exceptionally accurate eye for people. The two of them could be considered quite versatile. One was the keeper of cosmic order, while the other was a legend in the cultivation world on Earth. There was almost nothing they did not know about cultivation. But among the various proficiency skills, there were also specialties. Swordsmanship and Dharma treasures were indeed their specialties. This homeroom teacher was indeed not simple to be able to see through their specialties with just an entrance test. At this moment, the two bosses were deep in thought. Wang Ling, let me talk about the second thing. It's this semester's PE class. When Teacher Pan said this, everyone suddenly had a bad feeling. It's like this, class committee members. There are 22 weeks in this semester, and there are 3 PE classes a week, which means that there are 66 PE classes in total. But before the start of the semester, I had a serious discussion with the other teachers, and we felt that 66 PE classes were a little too much. So we've already talked to the PE teacher about dividing 33 of these 66 PE classes, which will be evenly distributed to the other teachers to use. The second semester of senior high school is starting to get intense. As the top students in the class, I believe that all the class committee members present don't have any objections, right? Super Chin, you're the PE committee member, so say what you think. If you have any objections, feel free to speak up boldly. But this year's recommendation for District 3 merit students. Super Chin immediately raised his hand. Teacher Pan, I have no objections. Everyone, you really don't? You can speak up if you have any. I'm still very open and democratic. Really? As the teacher's intimate little cotton-padded jacket, we as class committee members help share the teacher's burdens. We become an important engine for the class's cohesion. Super Chin continued. Very good. Teacher Pan nodded with a meaningful look in her eyes. Below the stage, everyone secretly gave Super Chin the middle finger. They despised him. Then we've already come to an agreement on the above two matters. If other students in the class ask, I can only answer that this is the result of a thorough discussion among the class committee members. Teacher Pan gave a devilish smile, and everyone's hearts trembled when they saw this. Whether it was the result of a discussion or not was actually obvious, but the role of the class committee, there was nothing they could do about it. They were there to take the blame. Whether it was Super Chin, Hirogwa, Lotus Sun, or Little Peanut, all of them now regretted standing up for the class committee back then. It was a waste of effort, and if they were even the slightest bit careless, they would be talked about by the other students. Next is the third matter, which is also the most important. Saying this, Teacher Pan looked around at everyone. The parent-teacher conference should have been held in the middle of the semester, but given the tight schoolwork, Headmaster Chen has decided to bring it forward. It'll be held this week. On one hand, it'll let the parents quickly understand how the mock test went, and on the other hand, it'll ease the students' stress in the future. This time, our parent-teacher conference will mainly discuss 2 points. The first is one-on-one service. In the future, we'll set up 2-person study groups in our class, with students with good grades leading students with average or lower grades. Speaking up to this point, Teacher Pan paused, and finally focused her gaze on Wang Ling. Student Wang Ling, do you now know why I called you out alone? Of course Wang Ling knew why. Because in the past 6 months, he had perfectly suppressed the average score of the class. But Wang Ling had overlooked one thing. Although his grades were above average, they were too stable. And it was precisely because of this stability that Teacher Pan felt that Wang Ling was a model. Perhaps she could start with Wang Ling and set up a model of one-on-one study groups. Chapter 1082. Wang Ling hadn't expected that his overly stable grades would instead attract Teacher Pan's attention. He had thought that with his average grades, he would be invisible in class, and had never expected that in the end, Teacher Pan would still set her sights on him. As a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school, Teacher Pan had guided countless students to get into key universities. Based on her intuition, she naturally felt that Wang Ling was a very malleable student. In a sense, Teacher Pan even thought that Wang Ling was a talent. Since he was a talent, there was a lot of room for improvement. But in previous years, the one-on-one study groups had usually been opposed by some parents and students. There were many reasons why parents objected. Sometimes, the one-on-one groups consisted of a boy and a girl, and there were times when feelings would be affected in the process. It wasn't a good idea to fall in love at this juncture. The reason why students objected was that one-on-one groups delayed the end of school, and also expended a lot of energy in addition to studying. Why couldn't they use this one-on-one time on something they were interested in? So after full consideration, Teacher Pan decided to start with Wang Ling as a pilot, and if the effect was good, she would slowly spread it out. She even thought that a one-on-one rotation system could be implemented. For example, if student A helped student B improve his grades, then student A's one-on-one task would end, and it would be student B's turn to tutor student C. In this way, not only would the students learn something, but they would also consolidate what they had learned in the process of helping others. So, here was the problem. Who should guide him in his studies? Is there anyone present who is willing to tutor student Wang Ling? Jin Yuan and Gu Xuanji fell silent again. Tutor? What could they tutor Wang Ling for? Wasn't that like teaching a teacher a lesson? Seeing that no one answered, Teacher Pan swept her gaze over the class committee members present. All of them had above-average grades, and the two with the best grades were naturally the two new students. But considering that these two new students had just arrived at the school, Teacher Pan felt that directly asking them to help Wang Ling would make number 60 high school's original academic standards seem inadequate. Furthermore, looking at the conflicted expressions on their faces, it seemed that they weren't willing to tutor Wang Ling. Thus, after comprehensive consideration, Teacher Pan made her final decision. Classmate Lotus-san, I'll leave classmate Wang Ling to you. Is that okay? As soon as Teacher Pan said this, everyone's gazes were instantly shaken. The class committee members first looked at the flushed Lotus-san and then at the expressionless Wang Ling, their hearts filled with complicated emotions. After the end of the Spirit Sword exchange meet, all the rumors about this pair had died down. Now that Teacher Pan had put them together again, it actually felt like a lifetime had passed. There was naturally a reason why Teacher Pan had put them together like this. There had indeed been rumors in school that Wang Ling and Lotus-san were dating and that they liked each other, but the problem was that this news had been buried. In the end, Teacher Pan found out that it was all because Wang Ling was too cold, and kept girls at a distance. Being cold is good. When it comes to relationships, as long as one side is cold, it will never happen. Thus, Teacher Pan thought that there was absolutely nothing wrong with this combination. Wang Ling. Of course there was something wrong with him. Not long after the class committee meeting ended, the whole class knew about the one-on-one study group. Of course, apart from this matter, the 33 PE classes that had been taken away had also become a hot topic of discussion. Why didn't you fight for it? Someone complained. It's not like you don't know old Pan's personality, what's the use of fighting for it? Super Chen shrugged helplessly. His position as a PE committee member had already been useless for more than a day or two. There were said to be 33 classes, but in fact, there weren't any. The remaining 33 classes might be snatched away for all sorts of mysterious reasons when the PE teacher went out to do research or when the group fell ill. It would already be a miracle if there were 20 PE classes this semester. If this was already the case in the second semester of senior grade 1, everyone couldn't help worrying about their lives in senior grade 2 and 3. Everyone clearly felt the pressure. When it really was senior grade 3, there was probably no need to think about PE classes anymore. Usually, the school would gather the students together for a burst of training before the PE exams. Wang Ling and Lotus-san each had their own plans for the two people whom Teacher Pan had successfully pulled strings for them, Emotionally, Lotus Sun knew that she had really hit an iron plate this time. In the first half of the semester, she had racked her brains to think of ways to attract Wang Ling's attention, but in the end, Wang Ling still looked out the window expressionlessly with his head tilted to one side during class. She had thought that their relationship would take a step forward after the Spirit Sword exchange meet, but she hadn't expected Wang Ling to really have no plans to fall in love. Lotus Sun naturally understood that a forced melon wouldn't be sweet. But no matter what, this one-on-one study group this time was a very rare opportunity. Lotus Sun felt that it was time to say those words that she had kept bottled up in her heart for a long time. No matter what the outcome was. On the other side, Wang Ling was also deep in thought at that moment. It was time for school to end, and everyone in the classroom had already left. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were facing each other at a desk. Lotus Sun was flipping through all of Wang Ling's mistakes and test papers. After all, her main task was to help Wang Ling study, and improving his grades was number one. As for personal matters, there was still time to talk about them after tutoring. Lotus Sun examined each mistake very seriously, and was greatly shocked by the results. Classmate Wang Ling, how can your mistakes be so evenly distributed? Lotus Sun examined Wang Ling's test papers from beginning to end, and found that he had made a lot of small mistakes in the details. For example, he didn't write in units, deliberately left out a certain symbol, or got the answer wrong at the last step of disassembly. Furthermore, the answer was very close to the correct value. Actually, these were all Wang Ling's usual methods to keep his marks down. If he didn't write in units, he could guarantee that at least 10 marks would be deducted from his paper. Sometimes, if his handwriting was deliberately sloppy, around 5 marks might be deducted. Wang Ling didn't feel the slightest heartache about these marks. In any case, to Wang Ling, units of measurement and whatnot were just tools he used to keep his marks down. Lotus Sun then copied down a few exercise questions in her workbook. She didn't copy the exercise questions, but changed the values of several variables. Finally, she pushed the exercise questions back in front of Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, these are the questions you got wrong. Can you do them again? Wang Ling stared at the workbook in silence. Chapter 1083. Of course, Wang Ling knew how to do all of these questions, but now the question he had to think about was how to get them right without seeming out of place. So, should he follow the procedure or just say he didn't know how to do them? Wang Ling was thinking. Staring at Wang Ling's nervous expression, Lotus Sun was even more puzzled. It was just one wrong question. Did he have to be so nervous? She couldn't tell that Wang Ling's mental fortitude wasn't very good, which was a big taboo in an exam. When faced with a wrong question they had made in the past, some people would often become very suspicious, and would always suspect that they had miscalculated, so they would repeatedly change their answers. In the end, it was also possible to calculate the correct answer incorrectly. Classmate Wang Ling, take a deep breath, don't be so nervous. If you're careful, you can definitely do it. Lotus Sun encouraged Wang Ling. Not all boys receive this kind of treatment. Sure enough, after Lotus Sun's encouragement, Wang Ling could already hear the commotion around him. It looked like he and Lotus Sun were the only 2 people in the classroom, but that wasn't the case. Countless pairs of eyes and ears were staring at them from all around the classroom, or even above it. This was the real reason why Wang Ling was in such a predicament. It actually wasn't that scary to tutor them face to face. The scariest thing was that Lotus Sun's innate attraction to the opposite sex would draw their hatred toward Wang Ling. While Lotus Sun was encouraging him, the boys who had been watching them couldn't sit still. They were so envious that they were about to go out of shape. More than 10 boys were lying on the floor of the teacher's room upstairs using the ground listening spell to listen in on the tutoring session. After hearing Lotus Sun's sweet voice, one of them angrily pounded the floor, and it immediately cracked open. What's that sound? Lotus Sun raised her head suspiciously and looked upstairs. There was an empty room upstairs, so there shouldn't be anyone there. Could it be her bodyguard? Ever since the shadow stream incident, Lotus Sun's bodyguards had been following her like a shadow, and it wasn't unusual for them to inadvertently cause a commotion. Forget it, tutoring classmate Wang Ling was more important. Lotus Sun's mind was full of questions, but in the end, she focused her attention on Wang Ling again. After waiting for a few minutes and seeing that Wang Ling still hadn't moved, Lotus Sun exhaled slightly. She closed the exercise book and put it aside, then took out a test paper full of multiple-choice questions. Student Wang Ling, how about this? These variable manipulation problems could be put aside for now. You're too nervous. You'll make mistakes easily. Why don't we do a few multiple-choice questions first to relax? Lotus Sun's voice was soft and incomparably gentle, and the boys lying on the floor upstairs all felt their hearts itch. As a result, the boys became unhappy as they listened. This brat is really still pretending to be obedient after getting a bargain. Even when my goddess talks to him, he won't listen to her. Yeah. If only Lotus Sun would take the initiative to talk to me. A few boys who were lying on the ground revealed looks of envy, but soon, they noticed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. Adolescent boys and girls were always sensitive to the sour smell of love. Furthermore, there were rumors that Lotus Sun and this classmate Wang Ling had gone out on a date long before this. Now that they were having one-on-one tutoring session, all kinds of thoughts naturally popped up in everyone's minds. This Wang Ling went on a date with Lotus Sun before. Do you think he's not saying anything now because he's thinking about how to confess? Confess? The boys thought about it and felt that something wasn't right. They looked nervous and broke out in a few beads of cold sweat. Indeed, if a boy didn't say anything for a long time, it was indeed suspicious that he was thinking about how to confess. These boys were all from other classes, and actually didn't know much about Wang Ling's personality. Furthermore, when they had heard the news that Lotus Sun and Wang Ling had gone out on a date, they had all been convinced that it was Wang Ling who had pestered Lotus Sun to go out on a date. Classmate Lotus Sun hadn't been able to refuse him. Who would have thought that this brother would be so scheming? The boys were horrified as they tried to think of a possibility. Then, was it possible that this classmate Wang Ling hadn't been able to find a chance to confess when they had gone out on a date, so he had deliberately done badly in his senior high school entrance exam last semester so that Lotus Sun could tutor him? How could he? What a great plan! The boys lying on the floor silently clenched their fists. On the other side, in order to ease the tense atmosphere, Lotus Sun gave Wang Ling some multiple-choice questions that he had gotten wrong before. Wang Ling naturally knew the correct answers to these questions. It was just that he had chosen a C in the exam. Relying on multiple-choice questions to control his scores was also a common tactic. Furthermore, Wang Ling liked to do multiple-choice questions the most, because the rule was that he would only get points if he got all of them right, and he wouldn't get any points if he got them wrong. In this way, Wang Ling didn't get them wrong so deliberately. He could choose a correct answer and a wrong answer on the multiple-choice questions to deliberately get them wrong. And now, the first question Wang Ling was faced with was a multiple-choice question. Multiple-choice question. The question was as follows. A male and female cultivator are known to have entered the cosmic cave. The female cultivator was injured in a battle, and the male cultivator, after examining her injuries, determined that there were 2 wounds on the female cultivator's body. One was caused by an iron-eating beast, and the other was caused by an unknown thorn that had passed by. Both wounds were highly toxic, but the female cultivator didn't directly die. In this case, how should this kind of injury be treated? A. Help the female cultivator suck out the toxins from her wounds and apply medicine to bandage them. B. Use the blood guide spell to expel the poisonous blood, and use the blood-making spell to create new, uncontaminated blood in the body. C. Use a purifying magic artifact to purify the blood. D. Perform dual cultivation with the female cultivator, and expel the toxins from the sweat glands through dual cultivation. This question looked very complicated, but was actually very simple. Looking at the question, Wang Ling actually already had an idea in mind. The biggest reason why the female cultivator hadn't directly died in the presence of 2 highly toxic poisons was that she was fighting poison with poison. The toxins of the thorns and the iron-eating beast were both highly toxic, but they restrained each other, so they could coexist peacefully in the body. But if the wounds weren't treated, she might not die, but the spirituality of her spirit root would be contaminated, and her cultivation would be greatly damaged. Option A seemed fine, but it was in fact a fatal operation, because the wounds were in two different places. Sucking out one of the toxins would instead cause the other to take over, and ultimately cause the toxins to become unbalanced in the body. It was directly eliminated. As for the second wrong option, it was option B. The blood guide spell and the blood-making spell were feasible, but they could only be used when the poisons were mild. They weren't suitable for highly toxic poisons. Because these two spells took a long time to cast, it would be difficult to complete them with only the male cultivator's assistance. It would be best if there were two people, one to draw the blood and the other to make the blood. This was the most efficient and suitable method. After sending out option A and option B, the only answers left were C and D. Many students would often choose this option straight away after seeing it, which was precisely the trap of this multiple-choice question. Multiple-choice questions could have multiple answers at the same time, but they could also have only one answer. And in this question, option C, which met all the conditions, was also wrong. A purifying magic artifact could indeed treat highly toxic poisons, but the enemy this pair of cultivators were facing was an iron-eating beast, which specialized in devouring magic artifacts. Thus, it was very likely that the magic artifacts the cultivators were carrying were already damaged. So option C didn't work at all. In the end, Wang Ling could only look at option D, dual cultivation. Wang Ling murmured. Lotus Sun immediately nodded, and was just about to congratulate Wang Ling for getting it right, when in a split second, there was a sudden rumble from upstairs. Who? Who wants to dual cultivate with classmate Lotus Sun? Wang Ling, you old thief, come out and die. Several boys from other classes smashed the floor together and fell from the sky. Chapter 1084. Of course, Wang Ling could deliberately choose the wrong answer, but he knew that once he chose the right answer, this bunch of brothers in the ceiling wouldn't be able to resist rushing out. Thus, as the ceiling caved in, the one-on-one tutoring activity came to an end just as it had begun. After that, bodyguards from Huagua Water Curtain Group rushed in with Old Li and a group of school guards. The commotion was so loud that the school guards and bodyguards thought there had been an explosion in the classroom, and they instantly panicked. Armed with explosion-proof magic treasures, they poured into the classroom, which instantly became overcrowded. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were squeezed in the middle of the crowd and couldn't move at all. When the scene calmed down again, it was already more than 10 minutes later. Inside the school, Old Antique was still marking exam papers on the night shift. He severely criticized several boys for destroying the school's public facilities. Nonsense. Old Antique stared at these boys from other classes. They were a group of Senior 3 students, and were Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's seniors, so their spells were more pure and destructive. Although number 60 high school wasn't a key city high school yet, the quality of its students was indeed getting better with each batch. Old Antique knew some of these people, and one of them was even a cadre of the student union. But now that they had made a mistake, Old Antique naturally treated them equally and wouldn't be careless. When a cadre made a mistake, the punishment they would receive would often be heavier. Old Antique looked around at them and deliberately lowered his voice. To be honest, he wasn't used to being the bad guy. Do you know how dangerous this is? You're not allowed to use magic in the teaching building without the guidance of a teacher. Isn't this written in the high school student handbook? When you first entered the school, didn't you have to carry it? The teaching building had been built with special materials, and wasn't made of jerry-built materials. Logically speaking, it was impossible to damage the walls and floors of the teaching building without using magic. Thus, Old Antique could tell that these boys had most likely used some kind of trick. A boy stepped forward. Teacher Yang. I was just accumulating power. So what if you're accumulating power? The power accumulation spell is also a spell. Old Antique glared at this unreasonable student. You. 5,000 words of self-reflection, give it to me tomorrow. This boy felt a little aggrieved. Then if we can't accumulate power, can student Wang Ling and student Lotus Sun do double cultivation? 10,000 words of self-reflection. The corners of Old Antique's mouth twitched as he looked at this student. Why? The second boy was unconvinced. Because of your impure nature. They are obviously having an academic discussion. Old Antique showed the boys the multiple-choice question which Wang Ling had just done, and they all lowered their heads. They had no choice but to take the blame. Indeed, they were the ones who were defiled. Now, they're in the first year of high school, so it's normal for them to interact with each other during tutoring sessions after school. Moreover, the few of you are already in the third year of high school, so you should focus on your studies. Looking at the boys, Old Antique said earnestly, as students, you should be clear about your place. The high school students, I don't care if you're in the wrong or not. In any case, you're in the wrong now. Since you're in the wrong, you have to change. How you want to return it, that's your problem. I have to find the reason myself. Under the bombardment of Ming Shui's grimoire, the boys finally surrendered. That's enough, teacher. We were wrong. We shouldn't have left school and stayed upstairs to eavesdrop. Your attitude can be considered sincere. Old Antique nodded. What spells did you use upstairs just now? Only the ground listening spell and the power accumulation spell. Then what level are you at with these two spells? These are compulsory spells, so we usually practice them together, and we've already mastered them. Each of us has reached level 6. Oh. These two spells consume a lot of energy, don't you feel tired? We're not tired, teacher, we've made you worry. Our primary task in high school is to improve our endurance with each spell, so that we don't have enough spirit energy or we can't clone ourselves during exams, resulting in a failure to cast a spell. The leader of the high school students replied respectfully in a low and modest tone. He had thought that by doing this, he would be able to move Old Antique in front of him and avoid some punishment. But Old Antique wouldn't fall for this trick. Eavesdropping was a small matter, but disrupting school official business was a crime. Even if he didn't have to be punished, he definitely had to write a self-reflection. Oh. If you're not tired, then the self-reflection will be 20,000 words each. Leave it to me tomorrow morning. On the other side, Wang Ling was finally able to escape because the classroom's ceiling had collapsed. In a situation like this, a lot of people would think that they didn't have to go to school tomorrow, but the truth was that this was very silly and naive. The teaching building was made of very special restorative clay, and with the help of a spell, the collapsed ceiling would be restored to its original state. It was just that it would be a little more troublesome to clean up the classroom, which was naturally done by the high school students who had broken the rules. At that moment, Wang Ling walked toward the school gate with his hands in his pockets. Lotus Sun followed him. She had something she wanted to say, but was hesitating. Now that there was no one at the school gate, she thought this might be a good opportunity. Classmate Wang Ling. Finally, she opened her mouth. Up ahead, Wang Ling stopped and turned his head slightly to look at her with his hands in his pockets. The girl's face was red, as if she was holding back her strength. The words were clearly on the tip of her tongue, but she didn't have the courage to say them. Because of her personality, she had been pampered at home since she was a child, and had calmly rejected countless suitors. She had never thought about how she would feel when it was her turn to be rejected one day. Would she feel lost? Or would she sink into complete despair? Maybe both. Because of this, the girl felt like she had fallen into a whirlpool of youth. She didn't know if this was love, but she was sure that this might be what it felt like to like someone. Lotus Sun, you can do it, you have to say it. Say it out loud. Tell all your feelings to the youth in front of you. Classmate Wang Ling. Finally summoning up her courage, the girl spoke again. Wang Ling. I also think crispy noodle snacks are very delicious. Wang Ling nodded and breathed a long sigh of relief in his heart. He then walked home without looking back. At that moment, Lotus Sun's heart was on the verge of collapse. The girl threw her handbag to the ground with a pia sound. Why was what she thought and what she said completely different? What a fraud. Chapter 1085. According to a general survey in Huaxiao Nation, the number of single cultivators in Huaxiao was increasing year by year. Currently, there were already more than 1 billion singles in the country. This was just the statistics for Huaxiao Nation. If you looked at the whole world, the number of singles would probably be even more exaggerated. If you looked deeper into it, there were all sorts of reasons why cultivators were single. According to the results of the poll, the top 3 reasons for being single were: 1. Being addicted to being single. 2. Not willing to make do with it. 3. Realms and strength don't match, so they can't be well matched. The first reason, which was also the one with the most votes, was actually very easy to explain. Being addicted to being single. After a person had been single for a long time, they would indeed get used to being single, and thus develop a psychological aversion to being in love. This was a psychological factor. Especially when people got older and past the period of puberty where it was easy to be restless, there would be even less love stories where blood was shed in the heat of the moment. People who grew up, because of the factors of the social environment, would often think more complicated than they did in their youth. Even if they were in a relationship, many factors would be taken into consideration. So rather than being complicated, it was better not to fall in love. After falling in love, expenses would increase, and your freedom to live would be compressed to a certain extent as you would have to share everything with your other half. People who weren't used to these troubles would rather be single. Over time, they would realize that being single really was pretty good. Especially those who had failed relationships before, they felt that being single was very comfortable. The second reason was that they didn't want to make do with it. This reason was actually very easy to understand. After all, as long as cultivators were willing to maintain their figure and appearance, they could maintain their youthful appearance forever. Female cultivators didn't have to worry about their appearance gradually aging as they aged, so of course they were more eager to find their Mr. Right. It was the same for male cultivators. They felt that they could wait for something better, and believed that they could find their fated one, so they didn't want to find someone to make do with it. Thus, whether it was male or female cultivators, they would just waste their time like this. As a result, time would drag on longer and longer, and in the end, they would become addicted to being single. As for the third reason, it was actually very easy to understand. Being well-matched had always been a concept since ancient times. However, in the cultivation world, this well-matched match did not simply refer to material equality. The matching of realms was also very important. According to the marriage law of the cultivation world, when cultivators get married, the gap between their cultivation realms cannot exceed 2 realms. For example, if a gold core stage cultivator wanted to fall in love, he couldn't look for a body refining stage cultivator or a cultivator above the soul formation stage. That was because it was easy for things to go wrong in a relationship when there was a huge gap between their realms. For cultivators, age was no longer a problem in a relationship. Even if they were a few hundred years apart, as long as they liked each other, it was acceptable. But one's realm had to conform to the rules. Over the years, accidents had happened to the cultivators who fell in love across multiple levels because they didn't listen to the advice. For example, kiss of death. There was once a case where a soul formation stage cultivator fell in love with a body refinement stage cultivator, but because the difference in their realms was too great, when the two kissed, the soul formation stage cultivator sucked out the body refinement stage cultivator's tongue. In short, there are many reasons for being single. On the way home this time, Wang Ling's mood was a little more complicated. Looking up information on the single census on his phone, he seemed to be deep in thought. Because of himself, Wang Ling believed that he had been a very sensitive person since he was young. It was also because of this that he naturally understood Lotus Sun's feelings. Unfortunately, according to the current marriage law of the cultivation world, his right to fall in love had already been taken away. So instead of thinking about these impossible things, Wang Ling felt that he might as well focus on the present, study hard, and work hard to find a way to completely control his strength. Flowers may bloom again, but people will never be young again. In fact, Wang Ling had long anticipated that a lot of people would definitely confess to him during his adolescence. Thus, as early as when he was in junior high, he had written a spell called Single's Curse and cast it on himself. Note, this spell is ineffective on married people. The specific manifestation of this spell was very simple. If you ran into someone who suddenly wanted to confess to you, the person's words would have nothing to do with your inner feelings. But because Wang Ling had written this spell casually in junior high, it wasn't like it didn't have any bugs. But because it was a passive spell, once it was cast, Wang Ling would only be able to determine where the bug was when the spell's effects were released. It was like an electronic program. Programmers had to constantly test and discover the bugs in the program they had written, and then fix them bit by bit. Wang Ling could only use other people's confessions to him since junior high to trigger the effects of Single's Curse, and then fill in the holes in the spell bit by bit. Wang Ling calculated that since the development of Single's Curse, there had been no less than 20 people who had tried to confess to him since junior high, and he had repeatedly fixed the spell 20 times. The large holes had basically been filled in, and there might still be some small, harmless problems. Lotus Sun's attempt to confess to him just now had triggered the effects of Single's Curse for the 21st time. Sitting on the spirit bus on the way home, Wang Ling sighed. It looked like he would have to keep an eye on Lotus Sun's reaction tomorrow. He had already fixed Single's Curse 20 times, so there shouldn't be any major problems. Wang Ling remembered that when this Single's Curse had first been developed, there had been a huge loophole, so when it was triggered, a temporary curse would be planted in the confessor's body. In the end, it would become a contagious curse spell. Furthermore, the method of infection was very simple. As long as there was skin contact, you would be infected by Single's Curse. In the end, before Wang Ling graduated, this spell directly led to the extremely excellent atmosphere in his junior high. Not a single person in the entire junior high department was in a relationship, and everyone was studying tirelessly. In the end, even the young teachers in the school stopped dating, and were all engrossed in their teaching careers. The junior high which Wang Ling had chosen was actually very ordinary, and the reason he had chosen number 60 high was the same. The biggest goal was to keep a low profile. And it was precisely because of Wang Ling's Single's Curse that everyone became obsessed with studying. Their junior high's ranking in the entire city directly soared from the bottom to the top 3 in the city. By the time Wang Ling graduated from junior high, his original high school had already been promoted to a key city junior high. Chapter 1086. This was bound to be a sleepless night. Every time the passive effect of Single's Curse was triggered, Wang Ling was always worried that a new bug would pop up. On the other side, Lotus Sun, who was lying on her 50-meter-long bed, was also lost in deep thought. She regretted her confession today. She had clearly mustered up the courage to say it, but when the words left her mouth, they turned into something else. It was a good thing there was no one around, otherwise it would have been too embarrassing. Lotus Sun buried her head in the pillow and slapped the bed with her slender legs. It was November 5th, the second day of school at number 60 high. The news that several senior 3 students had disrupted the one-on-one tutoring group and pierced a hole in the classroom's ceiling had spread through the class. Although the ceiling had already been repaired overnight, many people still praised this incident from the bottom of their hearts. Well done. Wang Ling, as it turned out, tutoring with Lotus Sun was still too much of a nuisance. But Old Pan's plan clearly wouldn't stop here. He wondered if he should raise his scores a little in the next mock exam so that his scores wouldn't be lower than the average and he could get an above-average score. This way, the one-on-one tutoring group plan would continue, and Wang Ling would be able to get rid of the distress of having to stay at school for tutoring earlier, and give this glorious and great learning opportunity to the next unlucky person. In the morning, it was Old Antique's theory of history class. After a summer break, the students still missed him a little. When the familiar figure stepped into the classroom, everyone's eyes began to stare fixedly at Old Antique. Why do I feel like Old Antique has lost some weight? The students in the classroom silently observed Old Antique's rotund figure. After the summer break, they were surprised to find that Old Antique seemed to have lost a lot of weight. I heard that Old Antique went to volunteer teaching during the summer break, someone in the know finally said. Volunteer teaching? I heard it's a very poor place. Every year, our city organizes teachers to volunteer there. This year, it's our number 60 high and several other high schools in Payuan district who send teachers there. Old Antique is one of them, and he's been teaching there for half a month. This student said, in addition to the teaching mission, the school has also raised money to buy teaching supplies, such as textbooks and teaching spirit swords. These things can't be found in rural areas. When this student said this, everyone couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Huaxiao Nation could already be considered a prosperous and powerful nation since its founding, but some poor areas were inherently disadvantaged due to their geographical location, which directly led to unbalanced regional development. Although the motherland was prosperous, they had to admit that there was still a gap between the rich and the poor. Students. Old Antique stood on the dais. After returning from his teaching experience this time, his heart was filled with emotion. Half a month of volunteer teaching was very short, but it was enough for Old Antique to have a deep understanding of the poverty and hardships of a foreign village. I'm sure everyone already knows that half a month ago, my teacher went to Shihai village in Shihai County for a half-month volunteer teaching mission. The Alliance of 10,000 Schools initiated this volunteer teaching activity many years ago, and it's not just for winter and summer vacations. Every day, in every prosperous big city, schools would organize teachers to take turns teaching activities. The mobile volunteer teaching activity has greatly improved the teaching of cultivation in the poor areas of our country. At the same time, it has also provided great help to the children in those poor areas. It must be very hard, teacher, right? I'd be lying if I said it wasn't hard. Old Antique smiled bitterly. The terrain in those places is harsh, so the teachers who carry out the volunteer teaching activities have to be at least at the golden core stage on average, otherwise it'll be very dangerous. Because of the strong acid in the underground spirit vein, the residents in these areas have no choice but to endure such a harsh environment. Can't they move to a big city? Super Chen asked. They've lived here for generations, and their physiques have changed because of the environment, so those places aren't suitable for outsiders to live in. Furthermore, they can't move elsewhere. That's because it's very easy for them to not acclimatize to the environment. If they carry out volunteer teaching activities in such a dangerous place for a long time, it will have a huge impact on the teachers' bodies, which is why the volunteer teaching activities were carried out. Old Antique said, the special geographical environment makes it impossible for the local residents to smoothly develop in other places, and for people from outside the city to settle in and trade with them. In the long run, the area's economy will fall behind. And there are many other places with such a harsh environment like West Sea Village. But because the underground spirit vein can't be completely changed, our country can only intervene in other ways to stimulate the economic development of poor areas. For example, we can fire spirit power missiles into the sky that can suppress the strong acid in order to maintain a stable climate for a period of time. Another example is to take advantage of the special attribute of the underground spirit vein, and use its corrosive power as an energy source. In the West Sea Village that teacher went to this time, the villagers are very good at decomposing garbage. They all have a trash can at home that goes straight to the ground, and when all their daily waste is thrown into it, it will immediately be decomposed by the strong acid in the spirit vein. In some sense, this is also a way to protect the environment. Teacher, it's been hard on you, you've lost weight. At that moment, someone finally brought up the main point. Actually, the main reason I've lost weight isn't because of the volunteer teaching activities, it's because there's no snack bar in that place. I finished all the spicy strips I brought on the first day. It wasn't enough at all. Old Antique cried like a storm. Everyone, in the theory of history class this time, Old Antique used volunteer teaching as the topic to bring up a very key test point, underground spirit veins. Underground spirit veins were special energy bodies hidden deep underground. They weren't tangible, but were entrenched in one place like roaming dragons. When cultivators went into seclusion, they would often choose the most suitable geomantic location for their seclusion, and many cultivators would also rely on calculating the location of underground spirit veins to choose the specific location for their seclusion. There were big and small spirit veins, and they all had different attributes. The energy contained in the underground spirit veins under a big city was undoubtedly enormous. This was especially true for the spirit vein under the capital, Jinghua City. After class, Old Antique gave everyone a handout which listed the locations in which various underground spirit veins had appeared in historical periods. These were all mandatory test points for the next monthly test. During the test, 10 spirit veins would be randomly selected from over 100 pieces of information. Everyone had to answer the historical period in which the spirit vein had appeared as well as its attribute to be considered a success. After helping Old Antique hand out the handout and form, Lotus Sun couldn't help looking in Wang Ling's direction. Yesterday's confession had actually been a little awkward. She didn't know what Wang Ling was thinking, and had planned to sneak a peek at him. She hadn't expected that as soon as she looked over, she would actually find that Wang Ling was also looking at her. Chapter 1087. Sensing Lotus Sun's gaze on him, Wang Ling quickly averted his eyes and pretended to look out the window casually. In any case, he had indeed been careless just now, and hadn't been completely on guard against Lotus Sun's gaze. Wang Ling had indeed been secretly observing Lotus Sunday. Of course, he wasn't looking at her face, but observing her reaction. Once Single's curse was triggered, it would last for a full 3 days before disappearing. That was to say, if there was a bug in the spell, it would manifest itself during these 3 days. Hence, Wang Ling was both curious and worried about the bug that could appear on Lotus Sun at any time. Wang Ling spent the entire morning feeling apprehensive. Fortunately, nothing had happened for now, and there was no reaction from Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling heaved a sigh of relief. Maybe it was because the bug in Single's curse had been completely fixed. After all, it had already been modified almost 20 times, and Wang Ling felt that there shouldn't be any more mistakes. He was probably just too nervous. After the list of spirit veins was distributed in the theory of history class in the morning, Teacher Pan unexpectedly brought up the matter of spirit veins in Old Pan's Tao Talismans class in the afternoon. Everyone instantly tensed up. It was obvious that knowledge about spirit veins would probably be the focus of the assessment for the next month. Since the beginning of the Spirit Qi era, more and more underground spirit veins had been discovered by cultivators in various countries. They could be divided into 5 levels, and the 5th and highest level was called a heavenly vein. Currently, there were more than 1,000 heavenly veins in every corner of the world, and some were even hidden in the deep sea. Huaxiao Nation had 20% of the total number of heavenly veins, and almost all the developed cities were built on them. Heavenly veins themselves were an important source of energy for cities. High-level underground spirit veins could be regenerated, which meant that in theory, they had an inexhaustible source of energy. However, this had to be based on a balance between supply and consumption. In the current era of national cultivation, cultivators were using more and more energy from spirit veins every year. In the long run, no matter how many spirit veins there were, they wouldn't be able to bear the burden. Seeking a path of sustainable development on the premise of protecting the ecological environment is an unchanging topic for human cultivators. Teacher Pan rested both hands on the lectern, her gaze extremely serious. A lot of people hadn't expected Teacher Pan's lecture today to be so profound. This topic didn't have much to do with the Tao Talismans class, but as a teacher in charge, she also had to take into account the moral education of the students. Thus, Teacher Pan wouldn't be stingy in using some of her class time to guide the students to establish correct values. Anyway, there were still a lot of physical education classes this semester. But as for why he had brought up the topic of underground spirit veins today, it wasn't just because Old Antique had started it in the morning, but also because a criminal gang which specialized in robbing underground spirit veins had recently sprung up across the country. This gang had a strict organizational structure and a clear division of labor. It should be the most dangerous criminal gang since the Immortal Mansion was breached. Stealing spirit veins is just a crime. Once you're caught, you won't even have the right to go to jail. You'll be sentenced to death. Teacher Pan said solemnly to everyone in the class, if the spirit veins are robbed clean and the energy is cut off, not only will it have a huge impact on the regional economy, it will also have a huge impact on the living environment of cultivators. And the most important thing is that the barriers set up in every city are based on spirit veins. Once the underground spirit veins are robbed, the stability of the barriers will be affected, and the city will be at great risk. Teacher, have we locked onto the leader of this organization? Based on the joint investigation conducted by police stations all over the country, the leader of this organization is the new #1 figure in the dark network. But at the moment, we don't know much about this person, and we can't accurately determine his identity or ability. We can only roughly estimate his figure. Currently, the police have given this suspect in the spirit vein robbery a code name, #1. I believe it won't be long before he's caught. Robbing spirit veins. It wasn't that Wang Ling hadn't expected such a lunatic to appear. But underground spirit veins weren't easy to find. They were hidden very deep, almost close to the Earth's core, and ordinary people couldn't come into contact with them at all. At the moment, high-precision magic treasures were used to mine the energy of spirit veins deep underground. These high-precision magic treasures had independent energy bases and were heavily guarded. This was because the work of extracting energy from underground spirit veins was extremely dangerous. Once the energy base exploded, the entire city would be affected. But based on the energy base's defensive measures, it was basically impossible for this to happen. This group of people were actually able to extract underground spirit veins with their bare hands. They definitely had their own special method. After hearing the news from Teacher Pan in class, Wang Ling quietly pondered this in his heart. Things hadn't been peaceful recently. He had just helped Wang Wan settle the matter, and now this group of strange people had come out to mine spirit veins. Elsewhere, Audiobook hadn't made any progress with Bai Youquan's interrogation. It was said that Bai Youquan's attitude was very unyielding, and he refused to say a word. His memory had been shattered by Fate Dao, and even when the police forcibly probed his memories, they couldn't extract any useful information. On the contrary, because of Bai Youquan's arrest, the Black Shadow Army seemed to have quietened down recently and wasn't making any big moves. But this was what worried Wang Ling and Audiobook the most. They had already experienced too much of the calm before the storm. Biding their time wasn't a sign of peace. It was very likely that an even bigger conspiracy was brewing behind the scenes. Near the end of school that day, Wang Ling slipped into the toilet and prepared to use a teleportation spell to escape early. He didn't know what other strange things would happen if he continued to stay at school with Lotus Sunday. But just as Wang Ling was about to slip away, he heard a boy's voice in the corridor. Classmate Lotus Sun. Wang Ling looked in the direction of the voice. Using the king's eye, he saw a boy from the next class standing in front of Lotus Sun with a flushed face, as if he had mustered up all his courage. A confession. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. This wasn't the first time Wang Ling had seen this scene. Since the start of the first semester, Lotus Sun had received a number of confessions from boys one after another. Wang Ling couldn't catch up to the spirit of bracing himself even when he knew he would be rejected. And Lotus Sun herself seemed to enjoy the process of being confessed to. Just as she was about to give him the good guy card, the boy who had been about to confess suddenly yelled at her, "Classmate Lotus Sun. I hate you. I hate you the most. I beg you, don't show up in front of me again. Everyone." Chapter 1088. Wang Ling never thought that the situation he had been most worried about would still happen, and it had happened so unexpectedly. It was just that the bug in Single's curse this time wasn't as complicated as before. Looking at the current situation, it probably only spread to the next confessor, and wasn't spreading on a large scale like the last time. This time, it was a one-way transmission. That was to say, starting from Lotus Sun, if student A confessed to Lotus Sun, the curse would spread to student A. Then, if student B wanted to confess to student A, the curse would spread to student B. Thus, after realizing the problem with the curse this time, Wang Ling's first reaction was to look at the appearance of the boy who had confessed to Lotus Sunday. This boy was actually pretty good looking. He looked refined and had clean and fair skin. He was probably the type that little girls liked. That was to say, it wasn't impossible for this brother to be confessed to. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. As expected, confessions were a game played by people who lived in the Attractiveness Association all year round. If this singles curse had been applied to an ordinary-looking person, then the curse probably wouldn't be able to continue spreading. This type of bug was actually very simple. It wouldn't cause too much harm. As long as no one confessed to this brother in the next 3 days, it wouldn't continue to spread. But Wang Ling still paid attention and planned to secretly observe this brother of his. And so, the next day, on November 6th, this brother who had shouted his disdain at Lotus Sun in public became a hot topic. His name was worshipped as a warrior, and it started to spread among all the classes. God, this Xia Ming really has guts. Yesterday, he actually said he hated Lotus Sun in front of her. I'm afraid he doesn't want to stay in number 60 high anymore. Really? When did that happen? Why didn't I know about it? You slipped away too fast after school yesterday, so you missed the show. Lotus Sun was stupefied at the time, and I heard that she was so angry that her face turned red. Listening to the discussion in class, Wang Ling learned that brother's name. Xia Ming. Of course, Wang Ling didn't think that Lotus Sun was a particularly petty person who would do anything to Xia Ming because of his rudeness yesterday. But if Xia Ming really suffered revenge, Wang Ling would still take action. After all, he was the cause of this incident, and it was his responsibility to deal with the aftermath. That would depend on how things would develop next. As number 60 high's little gossip expert, Dopey Guo arrived at school early in the morning and waited for Lotus Sun to come to class so that he could personally ask her about the situation. Lotus Sun was the second person involved in Xia Ming's incident yesterday, and everyone in class was most concerned about her attitude towards it. Unfortunately, it seemed that Lotus Sun had asked for leave today. Student Lotus Sun, who had always been punctual, hadn't arrived at school on time. It's over. Looks like he's quite angry. Collecting homework, Little Peanut sighed deeply. Offending classmate Lotus Sun. I'm afraid her bodyguards are going to throw her into the river. Dopey Guo was also confused about this matter. Who can tell me what Lotus Sun's reaction was like yesterday? I left early yesterday and didn't see it. I heard people from other classes say that she's about to explode from anger. When has student Lotus Sun ever been humiliated like this in public? She must be furious. I heard that her face was all red yesterday, and she left without saying a word. Then, what about that Xia Ming? Xia Ming? After he said that yesterday, he fainted on the spot. Fainted? Everyone was horrified. What kind of ridiculous move was this? After saying such earth-shattering words on the spot, he even scared himself into fainting. This bro is also a genius. In short, whether it's student Lotus Sun or student Xia Ming, they haven't said anything since yesterday's incident. Instead, student Xia Ming won a large number of supporters. Currently, our school's Protect Rome Club and Xia Ming's Warrior Club are evenly matched, and neither side can do anything to the other. Little Peanut explained the current situation. Protect Rome Club and Warrior Club, these were the two student organizations that Lotus Sun had set up after entering number 60 high. The meaning of Protect Rome Club was very clear. It was a group of boys who specialized in protecting Lotus Sun but didn't have the guts to confess their love to her. These boys were willing to be her flower protectors and become her fans. The Warrior Club, on the other hand, was a group of warriors who had already confessed their love to Lotus Sun. Unfortunately, they had all been rejected by her. Thus, the biggest goal of the Warrior Club was to wreak havoc. Any other boy who had anything to do with Lotus Sun would suffer retaliation from the Warrior Club. For example, when Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had tutored one-on-one the last time, those senior boys had been members of the Warrior Club. Their attitude was very clear. If they couldn't get someone, no one else could either. At the same time, their attitudes toward Lotus Sun were ambiguous. From liking her at the very beginning to loathing her after being rejected, the emotional entanglement between liking and loathing was extremely complicated. But it just so happened that Xia Ming from the next class had performed such an earth-shattering feat yesterday, which instantly roused the Warrior Union's members. If this story continued to develop, Wang Ling felt that this Xia Ming might soon become the president of the Warrior Club. Xia Ming and Fang Xing were in the same class as each other in class 2, so Fang Xing was very clear about Xia Ming's usual situation. Xia Ming had spent a whole semester accumulating strength, and had finally plucked up the courage to confess his love to Lotus Sun at the start of the second semester. However, he had never thought that what he would say would actually be the complete opposite of what he was thinking. This undoubtedly made Xia Ming feel like he had been bewitched, thus, he didn't dare say anything at all, and even thought about transferring schools. Fang Xing took in the situation. The truth was that Fang Xing had already guessed the whole story from beginning to end. He had come to Class 3's door many times to secretly observe Wang Ling's reaction through the window, only to find that he was as calm as ever. What would the final outcome of this matter be? Fang Xing was curious. He knew that Xia Ming's condition was due to some kind of curse, but the problem was that Wang Ling had made up this curse himself, and without knowing the principle behind it, no one could break it. As for a way to break it, it wasn't like there was no way. As long as Wang Ling confessed to Xia Ming and the curse rebounded on Fang Xing, this matter would be over. But just thinking about it, it was impossible for that to happen. The word confession didn't exist for Wang Ling. What was more, Xia Ming was a boy. Chapter 1089. Although Xia Ming was revered as a warrior, his heart was in deep torment at that moment. He had been building up his strength for half a semester before he had finally spoken out loud with great difficulty, but in the end, he had dropped the ball at the critical moment. He didn't know why his words had turned into such nonsense when they left his mouth. Now, Xia Ming was caught in a dilemma. He didn't want to become a warrior of the Warrior Club, and he still deeply liked Lotus Sunday. But the school's Warrior Club now revered him as a hero. If his feelings were exposed, this bunch of people would probably take revenge on him, so in class today, Xia Ming was absent-minded all day. He experienced what only classmate Lotus Sun could experience, what it felt like to be the focus of the school. If number 60 High had a hot search list now, Xia Ming would definitely be on the front page of the day, with the word explosive next to it. But Xia Ming didn't know when the hot search list would disappear. When he passed by Class 3 during break, Xia Ming looked at Lotus Sun's empty seat. He had heard early on that Lotus Sun had been so angry at him yesterday that she had fallen ill and hadn't come to school. Xia Ming hadn't thought it was that exaggerated, but when he passed by, he realized that it was actually true. Of course, Xia Ming's purpose in coming to Class 3 wasn't just to look for Lotus Sun. When the focus of the incident during break suddenly appeared in class, there was an immediate uproar around him. Isn't that Xia Ming, the male lead in yesterday's news? A few people in the class began to shout and wrangle. I'm really sorry about what happened yesterday. Xia Ming walked up to the dais and bowed to everyone in class. He knew Lotus Sun's status in Class 3, and that almost everyone liked her. He had acted out of his mind yesterday, so he would definitely be hated by the people in Class 3. In order not to make more enemies for himself, Xia Ming had been conflicted for a long time before finally plucking up the courage to apologize again. This apology was immediately met with applause from Class 3. Xia Ming raised his head with a puzzled expression on his face. Super Chen stepped forward and directly put his arm around Xia Ming's neck. Bro. To be honest, I was dumbfounded by what you did yesterday. Who taught you how to pick up girls? Pick up girls? Xia Ming? Student Lotus Sun has never had such a big reaction before. Super Chen laughed. Don't worry, I've already asked around. She's not angry. If she was really angry, you would have been killed by classmate Sun's bodyguards on your way to school this morning. Wang Ling, Super Chen wasn't lying at all. If Lotus Sun really was angry, she wouldn't have needed to say anything at all. Given Huagua Water Curtain Group status, it was a piece of cake for them to arrange for a student's transfer. Coupled with Super Chen's open mouth, the fact that Lotus Sun wasn't angry was even more concrete evidence. At least in Wang Ling's opinion, it was true. How do you know so much? Dopigua didn't dare believe it. Everyone in class also looked at Super Chen curiously. It's like this. Lotus Sun has a childhood friend who's always been training in my family's body techniques dojo. I have her WeChat, so I was gossiping about classmate's son just now. I didn't expect her to tell me everything, Superchin said. Then what did this childhood friend say? She said that after Lotus Sun went back yesterday, those bodyguards saw that student's son had been silent the whole time. So they asked her to go over and talk to her. After talking to her for about 2 hours, this childhood friend realized that Lotus Sun didn't seem to be really angry. Superchin rubbed his chin and said, but she didn't tell me the specifics. In any case, one thing is for sure, student Lotus Sun seems to have taken a liking to Xiaoming. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that she likes him. Maybe she just has a good impression of him. Wang Ling. Xiaoming. Everyone. As soon as Superchin said that, there was a burst of F***K in class. In a flash, everyone seemed to understand what on earth Xiaoming's operation yesterday was all about. It turned out that he hadn't really hated her at all. It had been a reverse confession in front of everyone. It turned out that he had used a reverse confession to attract student Lotus Sun's attention, and was trying to express his feelings in this ingenious way. Everyone was stupefied. It wasn't just class 3, when the students in the corridor who had been watching Xiaoming, the male lead of the news, heard this news, their mouths dropped open, and their eyes were filled with disbelief and horror. Gee, what kind of godly operation is this? Everyone was completely horrified. The entire incident had taken a turn for the worse, and number 60 High was once again in an uproar. It was very difficult for this kind of plot to happen in real life under normal circumstances. Perhaps only an idiotic author who wrote songs every day without updating them, and who confidently stopped updating and went around being naughty would be able to write something like this. So this time, the whole school knew that Lotus Sun actually liked Xiaoming. Xiaoming had thought that the warrior union would retaliate against him after the turn for the worse, but after learning the truth, the brothers in the warrior union all looked at him with adoration in their eyes. In an instant, Xiaoming became number 60 High's love guru. During the afternoon break, there was a continuous stream of people coming to him to ask him questions about confessions. Master Xiaoming. Please teach me how to pick up girls. We won't be able to learn this trick of yours. A boy from another class came up to Xiaoming and looked at him with adoration in his eyes. I've been pursuing a girl from another school recently. She can't be considered pretty, but she's the tsundere type. Master Xiaoming, please teach me the right way to confess. How should I confess so that I won't be rejected? You have to be brave. Xiaoming didn't know how to answer. After all, even he himself had been lucky. Who knew that his reverse confession would make Lotus Sun develop a good impression of him instead? A second boy came up to Xiaoming. Master Xia. I have a big sister next door that I've liked for a long time, and she's very gentle. Also, she likes anime and cosplay very much. How can I win her favor? You have to be brave. Xiaoming said. A third boy came up to Xiaoming. Mr. Xiaoming. I actually have a younger sister. Of course, my parents adopted her when I was little. We're not actually related by blood. May I ask if I should be brave as well? You have to be brave and learn about our country's criminal laws. Xiaoming said. Chapter 1090. At lunchtime, it was Wang Ling's first time experiencing the canteen's unimpeded flow. Since most of the boys had taken advantage of the lunchtime break to ask Xiaoming questions about love, there were fewer students in the canteen. With fewer people eating, the hands of the auntie in charge of the cafeteria were no longer trembling. She wished that the students who came to eat more. Otherwise, the leftovers would be collected into buckets of swill and sent to the dragon pig farmers. The scariest thing was that once these dragon pigs were fattened, they would be sold to the physiognomy market and be processed into highly toxic pork chops by Jai Yin. This was a true waste. We're all growing up. How can we not eat? After asking a student why there were so few people, Mother Wan took off her apron in front of everyone, intending to go to Xiaoming's place and pull people over for dinner. 5 or 6 minutes later, a classmate who had come over to eat lunch after failing to get a consultation said that Mother Wan had also fallen. Everyone was horrified. So Mother Wan isn't married yet? An insider replied, yes, but the old men who were with Mother Wan didn't live long. Because of dark cuisine? I heard that's not the case. It's just that his body isn't good and his lifespan isn't long. Everyone was speechless. Mother Wan had the appearance of cursing her husband. Wang Ling picked up his plate, and the old auntie who had been serving his food scooped out a large pile of meat for him. Today's lunch was scrambled eggs with tomatoes, braised meatballs, braised pork, and stir-fried assorted vegetables. The soup was winter melon and pork ribs soup. Every time he saw braised meatballs and brown sauce or braised pork, he always had a habit of asking the auntie to pour a spoonful of gravy over the rice so that it tasted more delicious. Wang Ling, you eat so much every time, why don't you put on weight? Super Chen was extremely envious. As a muscle-building fan, Super Chen also liked to eat meat, but he had to control his food intake at every meal. It hadn't been easy to build up a figure, and if you weren't careful, you'd get fat again. Boys like Super Chen, who were especially concerned about muscles, often had to pay attention to their body fat percentage. Super Chen's body fat percentage was currently at 11%, which wasn't bad. Wang Ling picked up a meatball and sent it straight into his mouth. There was actually no such thing as not getting fat from eating too much, but Wang Ling could rub the fat off. If he got fat, he would just rub it a little, and the fat that had been rubbed off wasn't completely useless. This was the meat he had rubbed off of his body, and he had stored all this extra meat in the space of the king's eye. He thought that if he was injured one day, this fat could be used to fill up his wound. But regrettably, so far, no living creature in this universe had been able to hurt Wang Ling. Looking at the amount of fat Wang Ling had stored in the king's eye space over the years, he estimated that it should be more than 200 kilograms, which was about the weight of a pig. As they ate, Wang Ling saw Lu Qingyi and Wang Jin sitting at a table not far away, and the scene looked very harmonious. He heard that the two of them quarreled every other day at Wei Ji's place, and it was only because Wang Ling was at school that they calmed down a little. On the other side, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan also got their food and sat at the table next to Wang Ling. They actually wanted to sit at the same table as Wang Ling, but this was a matter of first come, first served. Wang Ling could only blame himself for being more popular than he had imagined. When he sat down, Super Chen, Dopigua, Little Peanut and Fang Xing would basically sit with him. It was 3 of these 4 people who were having lunch with Wang Ling today. Apparently, Little Peanut had also gone to consult Xia Ming about love. Halfway through the meal, Hirogua suddenly became nosy. Wang Ling, is this really okay? Wang Ling? Hirogua, if Lotus-san really falls in love with Xia Ming because of this, won't you suffer a huge loss? At best, it's at the stage where she has a good impression of him. If you fight for it again, who knows, you might be able to win her heart back. Wang Ling chewed the braised pork in his mouth and was silent. If Xia Ming and Lotus-san ended up together, his own attitude naturally wouldn't matter. That way, Lotus-san's attention on him would be completely transferred to Xia Ming. For Wang Ling, Lotus-san was actually an outstanding and good girl, but it was precisely because she was so outstanding and eye-catching that Wang Ling often felt uncomfortable. Feelings couldn't be forced, it was everyone's freedom to like who they liked. Of course, everyone also had the right to be liked. Does anyone want meat? If you want meat, come and help yourself. After a few bites, there was still a lot left on Super Chen's plate. Today, he still had to control his appetite. Dopigua didn't stand on ceremony at all, and ate all the remaining meat on Super Chen's plate. Why aren't you eating? After taking the meat from Super Chen's plate to his side, Dopigua looked at Fang Xing. In number 60 high, Dopigua realized that apart from Wang Ling, the person he couldn't see through the most was this class 2's Fang Xing. This was a little strange. I don't need to eat. I'm already full from listening to gossip. Fang Xing crossed his fingers and narrowed his eyes slightly as he smiled. If Lotus-san and Xia Ming got together, he would raise both hands in support. But for some reason, as Wang Ling ate, he felt that something wasn't right. He thought of Super Chen's consecrated mouth's conclusion about Lotus Sun and Xia Ming's relationship. At most, it was just a good impression, not necessarily liking. The main point, not necessarily liking, that was to say, Lotus Sun actually might not like Xia Ming. This consecrated mouth hadn't officially come to a conclusion. All of a sudden, Wang Ling felt that things had become a little messy. That afternoon, the heroine of this incident, Lotus Sun, finally appeared. The whole of number 60 High was in an uproar once again. After a night of intense mental struggle, Lotus Sun finally decided to look straight at her heart. After class in the afternoon, Xia Ming was practically pushed into grade 1, class 3 by a group of people. He faced Lotus Sun, and the two of them faced the class as well as the corridor full of students from other classes, both of them blushing a little. Go, Master Xia Ming. Support Xia Ming, take down Lotus Sun. There was a hubbub of voices in the corridor. Wang Ling sat in a corner of the classroom, silently eating a melon. He really was eating a melon. Wang Ling had a habit of eating fruit after meals. Today's fruit was a watermelon which Mother Wang had brought him in the morning. When he took it out, he casually cast the freeze spell, and he would immediately be able to eat the iced watermelon. Classmate Lotus Sun, classmate Xia Ming. At that moment, Xia Ming and Lotus Sun spoke at the same time. Everyone's gazes started to drift back and forth between the two of them. You first. You first. Again, they spoke in unison. Everyone thought in their hearts that this was most likely going to work. This was too tacit. Even the rhythm of their words was the same. Then I'll go first. Lotus Sun said slowly after calming down. Hearing Lotus Sun's words, Xia Ming's legs almost gave way. He had never been confessed to by a girl before. If Lotus Sun really did confess to him, he would wake up laughing even in his dreams. Classmate Lotus Sun, go ahead. At that moment, Xia Ming took a deep breath and was already prepared to be confessed to. Lotus Sun looked at Xia Ming with a smile in her eyes. Xia Ming, what you did yesterday was actually because you wanted to use this kind of ingenious method to attract my attention. I actually wasn't angry, Xia Ming, I know, Lotus Sun smiled. So you don't have to apologize to me. Besides, it's all thanks to classmate Xia Ming, you gave me the inspiration. Xia Ming was blank. Huh. Lotus Sun took a deep breath and calmed herself down. To be honest, Xia Ming's ingenious method of confession yesterday had indeed given Lotus Sun great inspiration. All along, Lotus Sun had wanted to attract someone's attention, but every time, that person would always ignore her. So after struggling with her thoughts all night and all morning, Lotus Sun was finally enlightened by Xia Ming's method of confession. Now that there were so many onlookers, would she be able to attract his attention if she said loudly in front of everyone that she hated him? She had already thought of her lines, which were mainly to copy what Xia Ming had said yesterday. The lines were as follows: Classmate Wang Ling. I hate you. I hate you the most. I beg you, don't show up in front of me again. At this thought, Lotus Sun turned to look at Wang Ling. Lotus Sun's loud confession rang out. Classmate Wang Ling. I like you. I like you the most. I beg you, please stay by my side. In that instant, Wang Ling was so frightened that he spat out a mouthful of watermelon juice and even dropped the fork in his hand. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.